Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the April 18, 2011 meeting of the Currituck County Board of Commissioners to order. Tonight we have Reverend Randy Blanchard of the Pillmore United Methodist Church, who is here to deliver the invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please stand. Thank you.
Good evening. Let us pray. Father in heaven, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for this time and this place. And we call upon your Holy Spirit now to come to be with us. Give those who govern us wisdom and understanding, that as they make decisions, they might make them in ways that are fruitful for you. In all our ways and all our doings, we give you thanks and honor. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At 5 p.m. this afternoon, we attended the Cooperative Extension Center annual report to the people at Extension Center. I know I was thoroughly impressed with the things that they do and the many programs that they put on throughout our county, and they deserve a welcome thank you from all of us. Item number 1, approval of the agenda. We have 2 changes to tonight's agenda. I'd like to add as item 11 a closed session pursuant to GS 143-318.11.3. Also, the Knots Island Ruitons have requested to be removed from consideration on item 5 this evening. Do I have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Is the amendment to fix the sheriff's overtime issue on this agenda tonight?
No, sir, it is not.
It's my understanding that would be handled tonight, as May 1st is just like a week away.
The finance director is still working with the sheriff to bring forward the number for y'all's consideration, but it's not on the agenda tonight.
So that means that money won't be there to start May 1st on the beach patrol?
I talked to Sheriff Johnson the other day, and she has some employees that weren't hired. She's taken some monies from one funds. Some employees that weren't replaced or weren't hired or will move. She just took the money and moved it over to overtime for beach patrol.
I spoke to her 2 hours ago, and she was under the impression that would be corrected tonight in the agenda.
Okay. Different information. Mine was 2 days ago. So.
Okay.
Item number 2 is public comment. This is the time to hear comments from the public on items of interest. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone who would like to speak on item number 5, I would ask you to please come forward now. If you have not signed up, if you raise your hand, you'll be recognized and have ample opportunity to speak. Thank you. First, we have Mrs. Doris Floor. Please come forward and give your name and address for the record. Ms. Doris Floor.
This is on item 5, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just wanted to let you know that I feel that our public facilities that we have in Currituck County are to support the citizens of Currituck County with educational venues for the kids as well as us seniors. They do a lot of training and holding different types of meetings for educational purposes. And I think that if alcohol is ever considered for those, that it would not be the proper thing to do. You need to wear the white hat and be our heroes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Floor. Next, we have Larry Etheridge.
First off, I'd like to pass on a message from Mr. Bill Thorne, President of Volunteer Fire Department. He asked you all to check your emails. They've sent something in as to their thoughts on the alcohol in the park. He asked me to pass that on. Now I'll get around to what I want to say. I guess I remember back when the agreement was negotiated between the county and the Ruetan Club. But the only one left is Commissioner O'Neill. He remembers. And it was certainly not the intent of the Ruetans at that time to ever have alcohol on this park at Knott's Island. They raised the money to buy that park with fish fries and donations to the Peach Festival. And it's just not the appropriate thing. And it kind of makes me feel bad when our church gives the Alcohol Anonymous space to use in our church. I wish there was less people attended it, but there's quite a few does. And I never thought to have to come over here and speak against alcohol on this park. And if it ever starts, you can't control it. What's the next event's going to come up? What other group's going to have a fundraiser that's nonprofit? How do you turn them down? And it's just something you can't control. I go to Senior Center a lot at noontime. Trust me, there's more and more young mothers with a little lunch, with their little kids out there socializing, talking, playing on the playground equipment. And also ask if this ever happens, with all the money was spent for the beautiful skateboard ramp, what are you going to post people at the driveway and stop underage children from going on the park when alcohol's being served out there? Because I believe that's the law. I mean, you know, if underage children being around where alcohol's being served. All of the people that I've voiced an opinion to me about it that's in favor of it, they don't live near it. They live down the other end of the island, a lot of them. And I'm not just speaking for myself. I live a quarter of a mile from it, so I pretty much know what goes on out there. But I know I was on the three-man committee that hammered out the deal with John Morrison, who was the attorney at that time, and the commissioners. And I brought it up on behalf of the Ruetans about alcohol being in paperwork. And I was told at that time that not to worry about that because alcohol was never going to be allowed on county property and county parks. If I had an idea that this would have come up, you can believe one thing, it would have been in the paperwork, which probably it should have been, and we wouldn't be here today. But I do know that the old Ruetans who's passed on, Vance's father-in-law is very active, and all of the other ones that started that thing has now passed on and died. You know, one reason they turned it over to the county was because they were worried they wouldn't be able to, take care of it, not be able to maintain it. It was 10 acres of land. And there was something in the paperwork with Ruetan's National. If the thing had ever collapsed, they'd have come in and took the park. And they were adamant about wanting that to be a park for the kids and for the community, a good, clean place to go, and that was their intent.
That's time, Mr. Chairman.
And I'm just speaking for them against tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do the right thing.
Next, we have Mr. Jim Clark.
James Clark, 8383 Currituck Highway, Powell's Point, North Carolina. I too can't believe that we have to meet here tonight to even discuss this issue, that some of our commissioners are once again supporting a proposal to grant liquor licenses to 3 of the county's family-oriented facilities, among them the Rural Center on Spot Road. This county has already dealt with a recent request to establish an RV park off Spot Road, which was rejected because the park did not fit into the community, citing, among other issues, the increased traffic that it would bring within the community. However, our own commissioners are proposing to introduce alcohol at that same facility, which would not only amplify the problem with traffic and increase DUIs, it would also ruin the family-oriented facilities at this environment for children that use them. Instead of protecting our children within the county and the facilities they use, some of our own commissioners are suggesting that we endanger them with the presence of alcohol. How do you think this proposal is in the best interest of our county and those who use this facility? I want to read a prayer by Billy Graham. It appears to me to be very relevant to the issue here tonight. Heavenly Father, we come before you today to ask your forgiveness and to seek your direction and guidance. We know your word says, "Woe to those who call evil good," but that's exactly what we have done. We've lost our spiritual equilibrium, reversed our values. We've exploited the poor and called it lottery. We have rewarded laziness and called it welfare. We have killed our unborn and called it choice. We have shot abortionists and called it justifiable. We have neglected to discipline our children and call it self-esteem. We have coveted our neighbor's possessions and call it ambition. We have polluted the air with profanity and pornography and call it freedom of expression. We have ridiculed the time-honored values of our forefathers and call it enlightenment. Search us, O God, and know our hearts today. Cleanse us from every sin and set us free. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Manley West.
Live at 2658 Currituck Highway. Chairman Idlet and Commissioners, I've had the opportunity to speak to each of you individually, but I wanted to come here tonight to encourage you to not allow alcohol beverages on any county property. As I understand, the proposal will allow alcohol beverages at 3 county sites at this time, and this is the only beginning and would be setting a bad precedence. And yes, Mr. Idlet, it would be opening Pandora's box. One event will give the opportunity for others to come forward with more requests. With the Rural Center being promoted as a family center and the YMCA being built next to the Cooperative Extension Center, we do not need to promote or encourage the presence or consumption of alcohol beverages, especially at locations that have activities for young children. According to the federal government's National Survey on Drug Use and Health, young people aged 12 through 17 who have consumed any alcohol during the previous 12 months has fallen from 50% in 1979 to 16% in 2006. Alcohol-related traffic fatalities has dropped from 60% of all traffic deaths in 1982 down to 39% in 2005. While these trends are good, there's still that 16% and that 39%. That's over a third of all traffic fatalities involve alcohol. We need to do all that we can to discourage and not encourage the use of alcohol. I have heard that we lose business by not allowing caterers to serve alcohol in our county. According to yesterday's Daily Advance, Ms. Lowe stated that no alcohol policy has not affected the bookings. When I got married, I knew there would be people attending that drank, but we didn't serve it. They still came. Do you know who Truett Cathy is? He's the founder of Chick-fil-A. He was told he would not succeed if he closed on Sundays, but I think we all know the history of Chick-fil-A. It has been said that we are losing business to Dare County because they allow alcohol. I would say to you that we need to set a good example rather than following a bad example. You may find that because you don't allow alcohol, people will be more apt to attend a function. If you have to serve alcohol to get people to attend a function, they may be attending for the wrong reason. I know events that people do not attend because there is alcohol served. We all know families that have been destroyed by the misuse of drugs or alcohol. Do the right thing. Protect the young people of this county. You just announced a wonderful opportunity for our young people to develop a trade here in the county, partnering with COA. Don't give the indication that alcohol is permissible to our young people. Mr. Rohr, I read your philosophy on Facebook. You have an opportunity to decide what is being taught to our young people. Let me propose some questions. What would happen when someone who attends a wedding reception and is under the influence of alcohol pulls out in front of a family returning from a day at the beach? Who will foot the bill for the repair of the facilities if things get out of hand? And Mr. Petrie, as we discussed, we know things do get out of hand at times. I cannot stress to you enough to vote against this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Stevens, I believe it is. please. Good evening, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you commissioners tonight. We appreciate it so much. My name is Charles Stevens. I live at 753 Shawboro Road here in Shawboro, North Carolina. There is an old Japanese proverb that says, a man takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, and the drink takes the man. Personally, I've never seen any good come from the consumption of alcoholic beverages. And as a pastor, and I'm the pastor of the Providence Baptist Church in Shawboro, and as a pastor, I've pastored many congregations, and I have seen the end results of what alcohol can do to young people. I've sat in my study with mothers that have lost their children because of alcoholic consumption. So on the contrary, I've observed a lot of evil in regard to alcohol. There's a question that I would like to pose. Don't our law enforcement have enough to do without taking this responsibility on them as well, guarding and patrolling those areas where the alcohol will be served? We talk about our children a lot in this county. Since I have moved here almost 9 years ago, I've heard a lot about how we love our children and want the best for them. We say that we want the best for our children. We want them to grow up in a good environment, have good standards set before them, and given positive reinforcement. But just as sure as we make alcoholic beverages more accessible, it won't be just the man taking a drink, but the child taking a drink, and the drink will take the child. May you vote against item 5. Don't you think that alcohol has taken enough men and women and enough children? Would you not agree? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. David Sawyer, Mr. David Sawyer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
David Sawyer, 127 His Way, Maple, North Carolina. First, I'd just like to say that I think it's really been a blessing of my life to grow up in Currituck County. And one of the blessings of being a Currituckian is the fact that we're not like everyone else. And I believe that sometimes we look around and we think we'd like to be like somebody else, maybe like Dare County. But we're Currituckians. And one of the things about our heritage is we believe in family and do the right thing, I believe. Had a friend told me that his father wouldn't let him go to outings with other boys, and he said, Dad, why don't you let me go? He says, the other kids get to go. And he says, well, son, I don't want you to be like other boys. And, I think that all too often we're deceived by what we see around us. I've been really shaken by this when I heard about this, because I realized how complacent I'd become. You see, 30 years ago or so, I had the attitude that we should go and have a good time and have a drink at an event. But August of 1982 changed my mind, as we had a class reunion and had a good time. Somehow a good time seems like needed to be associated with alcohol. Well, my best friend was killed as he drove home drunk that night. I think about Lamar quite often, and all the opportunities I had to grow up with him and experience life. It's a tragedy we've experienced with the weather in our area. Not because of the loss of property. The tragedy comes when we lose lives. And I don't know how many of you realize it, but on the average, we lose lives due to drunk driving and more in the number of fatalities each day than what we lost because of the weather in North Carolina this past weekend. That 3 in 10 will be involved in some type of accident caused by alcohol in their lifetime. You look around, it's more than you can imagine. If you look at 10 people and think 3 of them are going to be involved in something. So I just ask that you really consider having Currituck remain Currituck. Let's be different. Let's have a place where our families can go, where we can say we don't need alcohol. That God's blessed us with revenue. If we think that we're going to get revenue by doing this, then I think we truly are deceived. And I appreciate you governing us. I pray that you really take it in consideration. I remember when I was raising my kids, they would want something, and every once in a while I just have to say no. You know, if it was up to them, we'd had pizza and ice cream every night. And so I just encourage you to be able to stand up to those that come to you and say, we want this. And just tell them, say, it's not the best thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Steve Pallett. Did you want to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address this issue? Seeing no one, yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Wayne Sawyer, 3676 Currituck Highway. I just returned from the cooperative extension report to the people, and I saw many of you there as well. And I don't know how you walked away from that, but I walked away from that very proud of what extension is doing for the community leaders, future community leaders in our county. We saw 2 young girls stand up there and explain to a group of people how they're going to be better leaders because of what the Cooperative Extension Program has done for them. My children are better leaders because of that. My grandchildren are growing up in that as well, and that's all part of Currituck's heritage. I can't imagine how offering alcohol in the Cooperative Extension Building or the Rural Center down the county could possibly fit into the positive impact that program has for this county. Anyone who's been around horses, as I have all of my life, horses, alcohol, youth, and events do not mix. Is the county prepared to handle those liabilities that could come up as a result of accidents that could occur as a result of that? I beg you to reconsider this proposal. Just like David, I'm a lifelong resident, native of Currituck County, very proud of my heritage here, plan on being here the rest of my life, if it's God's will. But I have to say that this really does shake me. You've never seen me stand up here before you over any other event, but this one called me out because I can't imagine how it can be good for our children. Your children, your grandchildren, all of our children. We have to think about the future of the county. So I beg you to reconsider it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing no one, Mr. McCrae, I'm sorry, Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak. In the time I've been a county commissioner since 1994, I've never received as many phone calls, emails, people stopping me in the street telling me this was the dumbest idea they ever heard in their life. And as a representative of those people, at the close of the public hearing, I'm going to ask that we move item 5 to item 2, amend the agenda, move it to item 2A, and my motion will be to not change the policy as it stands today. That is a motion on the floor.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
If you'll close the public comment, I'll make my motion.
I will close the public comment.
There might be. Is
Yes,
there
sir.
anything else on there for public comment tonight?
Other items.
I'm sorry.
Yes, some other item, but I think these are specific items.
These are items, item 4, and I'll close the public comment.
Mr. Chairman, I now make a motion that we not change the county policy concerning alcohol usage on the county facilities in Currituck County.
Second.
Have a motion, have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have discussion, please.
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Martin.
There's one thing here. This item was placed on the agenda for discussion only. It is not something that needs to be voted on. It was for discussion only. And the discussion has taken place from the people of Currituck. Like Commissioner O'Neill, I too received many emails, conversations at the food line in Grandy and the food line in Moyock.
And the food line in Avon, North Carolina.
And Mr. Petrie did convey that to me, that he was stopped in Avon about this. And I don't think it just needs a motion, Commissioner. I think that probably we've had the comments, we've heard the comments, and it was for discussion only, and I think we've heard that discussion. And I don't think that that is something that's going to be carried forth by this board in any way, shape, or form.
Mr. Chairman. My reading of parliamentary procedure does allow me to make that motion,
Yes,
and that
sir.
motion stands, and I want a recorded vote, please.
Could we have the discussion? We normally have discussion before vote.
Certainly.
Okay. I wanted to make a comment following up Commissioner Martin as well. There's been some misconception about the process we were attempting to go through. The Board of Commissioners, no one here came up with this as an idea thinking, wow, this will help things in the county. It was asked of us by private parties, and what we told them is we will not consider it without time for discussion and input from the public. And this is the input. This is what we've had, and we wanted to allow a period for that. Now, I was going to ask, is there anybody here tonight, by show of hand, that's in favor of alcohol use on any of these properties? But I see some folks, one fellow there. What we swore to do when we were elected was represent the people of Currituck County. Many of you have asked us our personal opinions about this particular issue. Frankly, our personal opinions don't matter as much as the opinions of the people that elected us to represent them. What we're here to do is listen to what you want and then reflect on that and then vote on that. And I think you've seen evidence of that in action. Now, if 200 people had shown up in favor of this, we would have probably had to study the issue a whole lot longer. But that's not the case. And that's exactly what we're asking for, and this process has worked exactly the way it should have. So I don't think you'll find any repercussions or backlash for a decision made this way, whether or not we vote not to change procedure, or whether we just don't act to change the procedure. The result is the same, that it's not going anywhere.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
call to question.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. No, I said aye.
Okay.
I was just
Opposed?
getting to it.
Chairman, the sheriff did write a letter in opposition to this. I would like for it to remain a part of the record and
So be.
kept in the minutes.
So
Thank
moved.
you.
Thank you, folks, for coming out and voicing your opinion, and that's what democracy is about. And again, thank you all for coming out.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
One last thing. I just want to make sure everybody understands. I was asked several times, why have you already voted on this? This was never before us as a vote. We've never taken a vote on it. It was just a matter of putting it on the agenda so we could hear from the people.
Thank you.
So just clarify, the policy is not going to change.
Item number 3, public hearing and action, PB 10-32, Corolla Light, Phase 10, request for special use permit for retail, restaurant, outdoor
Y'all can
recreation, outdoor recreation and miniature golf located at 1102 Corolla Village Drive, pin number 115B000P2AVOPEN, and pin number 115B000P2D1OPEN, Poplar Branch Township. Mr. McCray.
Why don't you let Mr. McCree take a couple minutes before we got some people trying
Just wait a couple minutes.
to leave. Mr. Farabee. Yeah.
Call a 5-minute recess.
Let's take a 5-minute recess, please.
Good idea.
We'll re-adjourn the meeting.
Reconvene
The meeting, excuse me.
Readjourn. What?
I like the first word best.
Yeah, where's your gap? There you go. Bang.
Mr. McCree.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this hearing is for the Board of Commissioners to hear and consider pertinent facts related to the special use permit application. A special use or special use permit refers to a situation in which a particular kind of use is permitted in a zoning district, not as a matter of right, but under ordinance provisions that allow the Board of Commissioners to issue a special use permit when the board makes specified findings. In addition to finding compliance with specific provisions of the Unified Development Ordinance, the Board of Commissioners may affix other reasonable and appropriate conditions to the special use permit for the protection of both neighboring properties and larger public interest. Pursuant to the Currituck County Unified Development Ordinance, the Board of Commissioners must be able to find and conclude from evidence presented during the course of the hearing that the application is complete, the proposed use of the applicant's property is among those listed in the table of permissible uses as a special use permit, the conditions proposed meet or exceed the minimum requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, the special use will not endanger the public health or safety, the special use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting property and will be in harmony with the area in which it is located, the special use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plan, and the special use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, including but not limited to schools, fire and rescue, law enforcement, and other county facilities. For the purposes of this hearing, the Board of Commissioners sits as a quasi-judicial body. That means the Board of Commissioners is required to comply with procedural rules much like those of a trial court and to provide for the constitutional right to due process, such as sworn testimony of witnesses, no reliance upon hearsay testimony for a critical finding of fact, and the direct and cross-examination of witnesses. Accordingly, those offering testimony will be placed under oath, and only sworn testimony will be considered by the Board of Commissioners in making its decision. The Board of Commissioners' findings must be supported by competent material and substantial evidence presented during the course of the hearing. Competent evidence is generally understood to mean that evidence which is legally admissible in a court of law. Pursuant to Section 160, capital A, 393 of the North Carolina General Statutes, the requirement for competent evidence does not preclude reliance by the Board of Commissioners on evidence that would not be admissible in a court of law if the evidence was admitted without objection or the evidence appears to be sufficiently trustworthy and was admitted under such circumstances that it was reasonable for the Board of Commissioners to rely upon it. As further provided by Section 160, capital A, 393 of the North Carolina General Statutes, competent evidence does not include the opinion testimony of lay witnesses as to any of the following. The use of property in a particular way would affect the value of other property. The increase in vehicular traffic resulting from a proposed development would pose a danger to the public safety. Matters about which only expert testimony would generally be admissible under rules of evidence applicable to the trial courts. In addition, the board may not make a critical finding based solely on hearsay. Hearsay means a statement not made at the hearing that the proponent seeks to have admitted as evidence of the truth of the matter asserted in that statement. A witness or expert needs to be present so questions can be asked about the particulars of their statement. An example is a petition, which is not valid evidence that can be considered in making a critical finding of fact. As provided in Section 14.4 and 11.7.1 of the Unified Development Ordinance, the burden of presenting a complete application required by the Unified Development Ordinance to the Board of Commissioners is upon the applicant. Once a completed application has been submitted, the burden of presenting evidence to the Board of Commissioners sufficient to lead the board to conclude that the application should be denied shall be upon the parties urging denial, unless information presented by the applicant in its application and at the hearing is sufficient to justify a reasonable conclusion that a reason exists to deny the application. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, then, as is typical, the case will proceed in the following manner. The planning staff will present planning staff case review and analysis. The applicant will have the opportunity to present their case. Represented opposition or parties of interest in opposition to the applicant's case will have the opportunity to present its case. Public testimony in favor and in opposition of the application will be then heard or considered by the Board of Commissioners, with finally rebuttal by the applicant limited in scope to issues raised by those in opposition to the application. With that, I would ask that anyone who has any intention to present testimony or other evidence during the course of this hearing, please come forward and be sworn in by the Chairman of the Board of Commissioners.
Please come forward, put your left hand on the Bible, and raise your right hand, please.
Like a law convention.
If I may, I would note that if you're an attorney, we're more than glad to have you sworn in under oath, I'm sure. But if your intent is just to make an argument, of course, you do not need to be sworn. Your choice.
That's just if you're an attorney.
That's just if you're an attorney.
Mr. Schultz, that's
just
only
if
if you're
you're
an
an attorney.
attorney. That's only if you're.
I'm just going to have to present an argument, because I had talked to the attorney before about this, and if there's a point of contention, okay, on the paperwork, the attorney told me that I can present an argument, okay, on the point of what has been presented prior, and that I don't have to be sworn.
If any statement's just to be considered as argument, not as evidence, that person would not have to be sworn.
I like seeing the attorney sworn though.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Woody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to present an overview of the case analysis that you've already seen in the agenda package. I'll try to be brief, but I got a couple of things I have to cover when I go through this. As you mentioned, this is a special use permit request, and the attorney just went through all the parameters of that request and how you decide and vote on it. It's for outdoor recreational uses, a variety of things, but more specifically miniature golf, among other things. The property is currently zoned general business. You can see on the zoning map on your screen. It's located in the Crawl Light Plan Unit Development Overlay District, part of the Crawl Light PUD. The current use of the property is actually a wastewater treatment facility and open space. What this use permit does is seek to establish a new use on the property, the recreational facility. I'll note for your benefit real quickly, to the north of this property across Crawler Village Drive is a tract of land owned by the state of North Carolina, which is within the view shed of the lighthouse. To the south of the property, you have the Crawl Light Town Center, which is a shopping center. To the east of the property, you have single-family dwellings that are part of the Crawl Light PUD. And, of course, to the west of the property, across Ocean Trail, you have the Wellhead Club and the Wildlife Center on property owned by the county. The land use plan, the 2006 land use plan, classifies this site as full service in the Crawler sub-area. Again, the approximate size of the site you see there is about 6.8 acres, and it's served by the Southern Outer Banks water system, so it has central water, and it's served by the Carolina Water Service, who provides sanitary sewage to the property. And of course, at the moment, currently, it is a wastewater plant. So, what I want to do real quickly now is go through the narrative of the request. Let me show this, and this is kind of what's before you tonight specifically and that's again an aerial photograph that shows the current wastewater treatment facility and a building, maintenance building, then of course the disposal areas, which are the little rotary distributors or the round circles you see on the property there. And I'll put the site plan up while I go through the narrative. What you see here is a 36-hole miniature golf course, an amphitheater type facility, a SkyTrail rope course, which is something that kids climb on, a little bit of retail, and then a cafe where you can buy some snacks and things like that. According to the applicant, this has kind of been an important question or something that staff's been working on, kind of a critical thing for us, is the existing wastewater disposal fields will be abandoned and relocated prior to operation of the use. Modifications to the wastewater treatment plant and disposal areas, of course, require permitting from the Division of Water Quality, who's under NC Diener. And staff is obviously going to request these permit modifications be approved prior to any construction or installation of the use. On March 28, 2011, staff was notified by the applicant that what their intention is to abandon or idle the wastewater treatment plant on this site, the Crawl Light Wastewater Treatment Plant number 1, divert all the existing flow down to the Monterey Shores Wastewater Treatment Plant. And as you're aware, Monterey Shores Wastewater Treatment Plant is a new plant located in Monterey Shores near Buck Island that was recently expanded and opened with additional capacity. The plan is to send the wastewater effluent or the flow from this plant down to that one, thereby eradicating or removing the wastewater treatment facility from this site. I'll note that this plant, Crawl Light, and the Monterey Shores plant are both operated by Carolina Water Service, so they have a single utility operator for both plants. On April 4th, 2011,
Division of Water Quality indicated that the state would be receptive to this proposal submitted by Outer Banks Ventures, the applicant. The state did say this is contingent upon a couple of conditions. I put the conditions in the staff report that the state's requesting. So basically, we've got a acceptance by the state of the plan proposed by the developer. We've also received verification from Carolina Water Service that they too are receptive to diverting the wastewater flow to the Monterey Shores plant. The latest site plan submitted, which is before you now, we received on March 24th. It is a slightly different site plan from what was reviewed by the planning board at their March meeting. I want to go through a couple of the changes from the planning board recommendation to this site plan before you tonight. One is they've indicated that temporary tents for the will be used for the amphitheater and vending areas on the site. They've increased in the seating capacity of the amphitheater from 264 to 308 seats. And finally, the plan shows the installation of a chain link fence around the golf course facility. Again, those are just a couple of changes I wanted to point out from the planning board. What you're here to do tonight, as Mr. McCree explained, is you're here to consider a special use permit. Before you as a board can issue that permit, you have to make certain findings. Mr. McCree went through each of those 7 findings. Of course, as we always do, the staff includes suggested findings for your consideration in the staff report. But I'll note, however, the board needs to make findings based on reliable and competent evidence that will be presented to you through the course of this public hearing. The TRC, the Technical Review Committee, is the administrative or the committee of staff that reviews these things from a technical standpoint. The TRC has reviewed the site plan for the use permit and does recommend conditional approval. The TRC's recommendation, of course, now that we have the authorization from Division of Water Quality, obviously before we'll give the final sign-off on the site plan, we want to see all the final permits and all the assurances received from DWQ and Carolina Water. So that is one condition that TRC has added. Additionally, planning staff has also recommended this permit, and we recommend conditional approval as well. One of our conditions is that TRC comments are met and satisfied. And also, and one thing I want to bring to your attention is planning staff would suggest that as you consider this, you may want to establish hours of operation. I think that's one of the compatibility issues, and part of the reason is if we have, staff feels like if we have amplified sound on this site, the amphitheater, you may want to consider the proximity to some of the houses that are adjacent to the property. So again, we would encourage you to consider hours of operation for this particular request. Now, one last round of conditions. I'm not going to read them all. They're in your staff report. But if the Board of Commissioners does decide to approve the use permit tonight, we are suggesting some additional conditions be added to the permit, which you have the ability to do in your capacity as a Board of Commissioners. I want to highlight a few of those real quickly. One is that your issuance of the special use permit does not constitute site plan approval. That's not unusual. A lot of times after a permit's issued, it has to go back to TRC to kind of dot the I's and cross all the T's. Another condition staff's proposing is that prior to any land disturbing activities or construction of the use, that all the completed, modified NCDNR permits be in our office on hand. So we want to have all those authorizations and permits completed before construction of the facility begins. And that includes a formal written acceptance from Carolina Water Service. Additionally, one thing that we think is important is as you see on this slide, it's the top of the screen, but it's the eastern property line. There's a tree line that separates the metal building and the wastewater facility from those existing houses. Staff's recommending that this 25-foot buffer within that all the vegetation be retained. We're saying that tree line that exists between the houses and what will be the golf course development needs to be retained and not disturbed. That'll provide, you can't beat a buffer. There's no better buffer than a natural grown tree line. So we would suggest that condition be added. A 10-foot buffer be provided between the miniature golf holes and the property line adjacent to 12. Again, leave that line of trees along 12 to give some relief from the traveling public in the golf course. Staff's recommending that low-impact development techniques be used. That's innovative ways to handle stormwater. Also asking that the development include preservation of existing features. More particularly, there's a berm that goes across the front of this site adjacent to 12. They do want to put miniature golf holes on the berm. We would suggest, though, that the berm itself be retained because the berm gives some screening from 12 to the remainder of the site. Also, we're asking that the live oaks be preserved on the berm. We'd rather see the golf holes meander in between the live oaks and keep those trees in place. I think that provides a good screen along 12, and we'd suggest that condition be added. And finally, the last thing we'd say is I don't know if this is a typo or not, but there was a chain link fence that was included on the site plan. Obviously, staff would recommend that we not allow the chain link fence along 12. If they do want to fence the site, we would suggest something that has an architectural style that emphasizes kind of a coastal look. If you'll remember, we had a chain link fence that was included on a previous putt-putt request. We made that same condition. We think that from Highway 12, visibility is important, and the aesthetics are. Lastly, I'll note the planning board heard this request. They actually heard it 3 times. They tabled it twice, and on their last meeting in March, the planning board did recommend denial of the request, and the reasons the planning board gave was due to proximity to the residential neighborhood, the lighting effects, noise effects, hours of operations are too long, its proximity to Heritage Park, and finally that it's not in harmony with the area. With that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions now or later on in the hearing. Thank you.
Members of the board have any questions for Mr. Woody at this time?
I have one.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Mr. Woody, I had a phone call from a gentleman last week. We did not discuss this project, but the question was asked to me about when the planning board votes no on a project, how can the commissioners vote yes when it comes to us? Could you explain what happens between the process of the planning board and a project getting to the Board of Commissioners? And as I said, we did not discuss this project. It was just a generic conversation.
Generally, the way the process works is obviously staff will start putting some concerns on the table very early. When it goes to the planning board, what should happen is if the planning board recommends denial, they give the reasons for denial, then what the applicant should do is address those reasons, is try to see what the planning board identified as problems and try to address those. If the applicant does that, then that's when at times you'll see the Board of Commissioners vote differently because the plan and the scope of the proposal will change between the 2 meetings. That does happen.
And therefore, so staff can change their recommendation from a planning board meeting between then and when it reaches the Board of Commissioners as well.
We do. We have. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Woody, I have a couple questions. Number one, the capacity at Monterey Shores, is that capacity open to be used from this area that's being taken in?
Carolina Water is the utility provider, so they do have the ability to allow that flow to go to the Monterey Shores plant. My understanding is that there's going to be some safeguards, or they're going to try to establish some criteria where once the Monterey Shores plant gets to a certain percent capacity, at that point it's incumbent upon Carolina Water, or I'll let Mr. Bergen explain that better probably, or somebody to start building that new plant or start to establish additional capacity. So as it stands today, quite frankly, the capacity of Monterey Shores plant is somewhat allocated to future uses. So they'll have to make sure that when the crawl light flow goes into that plant, that there's a backup plan or contingencies made. Now, of course, I'll note that that's a decision that's made by the Division of Water Quality, North Carolina Utilities Commission.
Second question, is there infrastructure in the ground today, or is that something that developers are going to have to put in to be able to transfer that affluent from one place to the other?
The developer is going to have to install the infrastructure, and part of what Carolina Water agreed to is that that's fine, provided the developer incurs the expense for installing that infrastructure.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, the buffer between the homes and the proposed development is about 25 foot, I believe you said?
Yeah, the parking lot, if you look there, the parking lot's about actually a little over between 50 and 60 feet from the property line. But the vegetative buffer that the county is setting as a no disturb area is the first 25 feet.
Okay. And so that is part of one of your conditions,
Yes.
that buffer will stay there?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Woody, I've got a question. I was going through the agenda here. Your concerns that staff recommendations that you're recommending that the board look at. I think you said it's not mandatory. We don't have to do it, but I wanted to look at those and be able to read those on the agenda. And I've been trying to look through them. Is it on the agenda? Where I want to read his recommendations.
It is there. They start on page 5 of the. Well, I don't know what agenda page it is, but on the actual staff report, it's on page 5 of 20. I could read those, but you guys probably don't want to hear me read all those.
Well,
but I don't mind.
No, for the sake of time, but I just want to be able to look over them while the applicant is what is it, 19? 19. Okay, that's fine.
It's pages 9 and 10 of your agenda package. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions by members of the board for Mr. Woody at this time?
What-
Commissioner Etheridge.
Get it in my mind, even though the planning board recommended denial, staff now is conditional approval.
That's correct.
Commissioner Martin?
Mr. Martin.
One question, please. Mr. Wood, they not in harmony with the area. That's what the planning board is saying. And that's, I guess, that takes in several different things. And we're looking at that being across the road from Heritage Park. We're looking at, where it's at as far as in a residential area. How did the staff come to the conclusion that, this would be in harmony?
Harmony is a subjective term. What we do to kind of stay consistent and be safe is we use a land use plan for guidance. And based on the land use plan, we felt like there was conditions that could be added as far as buffering, maintaining the berm, controlling for lighting that we think helps maintain harmony or compatibility. But that doesn't answer your question that well. But in our opinion, it doesn't diverge far enough from the land use plan for us to step up and say it's not in harmony. The policy documents are important for how staff makes our recommendations.
All right, and one thing, the lighting and the way it would be reflective, would that is that part of the recommendation for approving this? That staff said that you all would do something about the lighting?
Yeah, under the UDO, actually, they're required to install full cutoff fixtures, which means the lighting has to shine directly down. There can't be any light that shines up or away from the site. So I think, and also in the lighting ordinance in the Corolla area, the lights have to dim at 11 o'clock. So there's already some fairly significant lighting requirements in the UDO that apply regardless of what staff says.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Etheridge.
2 questions. This is, according to the land use plan, a full service area.
It is.
And the last question, this keeps within the parameters of the allocated commercial space within this PUD, correct?
It does.
Thank you.
Any further questions from board members?
One last
Yes, sir. Mr.
question.
O'Neill.
The adjoining property south of this is a commercial area. Is that not the Corolla?
It's the
shops?
Crawl Lake Town Center.
Okay. And to the north is the the Muskrat Study area.
At one time it was, yes. In the 50s.
Okay, and to the west is the
Heritage Park.
Okay. So directly to the south is commercial.
That's correct.
And nothing happens on this site until the wastewater is moved somewhere else, correct?
Yeah, and it's constructed and operational somewhere else. That's right.
That's what I mean. So if the board found this use compatible with the land use plan, UDO, it would be some time before anything even happened here, correct? More than likely?
More than likely. I won't say yes definitively, but I think they have some work to do still.
Because it's contingent on Carolina Water taking the effluent, correct?
Yes, and getting that permitted and approved.
So people that object would have an opportunity at that time as well, correct? Or would that just be an administrative move by the Utilities Commission?
Probably just an administrative move, but I would have to. I don't know the answer to that.
Because the Utilities Commission is going to have to sign off on that. Is that not correct?
That's my understanding.
You can't just reallocate wastewater without utility staff and commission signing off on it.
Yeah, there's an approval process that exists within the state of North Carolina that really governs how this wastewater is transferred more so than the county does, quite frankly. Obviously, as the county, we want to be stewards and be involved in that because we want to make sure we don't have a situation where we have a moratorium or anything
Like
down
we
the road.
had.
Like we have, yes. It's important to pay attention, but we're not the final approval on it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Anyone else?
I have no other questions from members of the board. Does the applicant have any questions for Mr. Woody at this time?
Not at this time, no.
Are there any represented parties that have an interest in asking any questions of Mr. Woody? All right. If not, the applicant may present their case.
As you may remember, my name is Krause Gray. I'm an attorney from Kildover Hills, but I live in Currituck at 102 Victoria Court. As I indicated, I think one of the times here, I moved over to Currituck County from Dare County.
Mr. Krause?
Yes.
Just one comment. We're going to have to quit meeting like this.
In all candor, no, sir. I get paid for this.
Okay. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Not a problem, sir.
Trying to put a little humor there.
I'm all for that concept, as you well know. This project is 6.88 acres on what was originally a 267-acre tract of land. The original Corolla Light project, which came before many versions of this board through the years as a PUD, Plan Unit Development, which had included within it residential and commercial full-service utilities. By my math, and understand, I'll go back to my humor for half a second, this boy don't add very well, and he certainly doesn't subtract very well, and multiplication really gets to me. But as I view this, 6.8 acres out of 267 acres is less than 2.6% of this total project. Now, why are they doing it? Well, in all candor, it's the same reason I was here last time before you with a different priority, and that is there's a need, and that need has been voiced over and over and over again for what are the people who are coming here going to do? They go out to dinner, it's still light, they don't want to just go back to the cottage, they want to do things. And so these recreational type amenities are important because they help bring and keep people here. Now, from your perspective as commissioners, keeping them here has a benefit to you, which is tax dollars. They buy things. They use their monies in Currituck instead of what they're presently doing now. And Mr. McCree was kind enough to note that legal counsel did not need to be sworn. I was going to get sworn for a simple purpose. My office is in Kildover Hills, and I personally see the parade of cars in the evenings coming from Corolla down this way. I used to live in Southern Shores, and we would see it on a constant basis. That's sales tax dollars that is going to Dare County and not Currituck County. Plus which, this can bring on jobs to this locality. More jobs, and jobs right now is something that I think everybody is concerned about. Now, having said all that, the bottom line is you got to figure out, well, is this the project we really want to have? I'll make a couple of quick comments about who is it that's making this application. The people that are before you now, as I've already indicated to you, and as you well know, have been doing this particular project since I think about 1984. And I think when you go there, you see that it is basically a first-class project. It doesn't give you some of the problems that some of the other projects have.
So the people who are making this application are the type of people that you want doing developments in this county. Quick point to you. If you look at the first page of your of your application thing, what does it show you? It shows you out of the 267 acres, the requirement of a PUD is that it must have 35% open space. Their open space that they've done in their development project is 49.37%, almost 50% of it. They didn't have to do that. They could have shoehorned some more stuff in there. They chose not to. You're looking at a set of people who, in all candor, are the type of people, as I've said before, that you want doing these projects. I will also point out to you that they have an existing golf course. And they know the need more than anybody, because they know how much their lines are at that facility. Also, I think if you check your records, I've asked the developer, and he has assured me that for that grass golf course that they presently have, their existing course, they've had absolutely no complaints since it was originally installed, 1988. Don't quote me on that. He told me, and it went in this year and out the other year. I think it was 1988. They built that. They've had zero complaints about noise, zero complaints about lights on that particular, and that's based on a lighting plan that wouldn't even come close to meeting your now requirements for lighting. What I'm going to do at this stage is I'm going to offer all of the experts that we have, bring them before you, let you ask your questions about this particular project. I'm not going to spend a lot of time spouting anything. We're going to bring each of them up here. If you want to ask about stormwater, you want to ask about the sewage, you want to ask about water, any of these, I'm going to bring them up and just have them tell you in substance that each of those things that we have either equal or exceed both your county standards and the state standards for each one of them. And then after they say that to you, they're going to shut up and simply answer your questions, so that if you've got a question you want to ask, so that at the end of this, we've presented to you any information that you need in order to make the decision that yes, this is the project that should go forward. Let me start off with you. This is a gentleman from Coastal Engineering. He is an engineer.
Yes.
And I tender him as an expert to you. He will certify to you that in fact the...
My name is Mitch Halloran. I work with Coastal Engineering and Surveying. And we were responsible for doing the site plans as well as the stormwater calculations on the site. We've taken all the existing coverages and the proposed coverages and provided a stormwater infiltration basin on site, which manages the quality management storm event, which is required by DWQ. Plus, we also managed the county requirements of a 10-year storm event. And in running the analysis, we maintain that all the on-site stormwater runoff is maintained on-site in the basin. So it exceeds what's required by the county.
Members of the board have a question for Mr. Halloran. All right. Are there any representative parties that have any questions for Mr. Halloran? All right. Seeing none, your next witness, Mr. Gray.
Thank you.
We would tender to you Mr. Bergen.
My name is Robert Bergen. I'm a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina and represent Outer Banks Ventures. It was my charge to bring about the designs to convey the wastewater from the Outer Banks Venture site on Parcel 10 to the Monterey Shores plant, which I designed for Carolina Water Service, as well as to design the Outer Banks Ventures wastewater treatment plant, which is permitted on their Parcel 11 and 12 in Corolla Light. We believe that we are in agreement with Carolina Water and can adequately provide for wastewater for this facility, and am open to any questions that you might have.
Any questions from members of the board for Mr. Bergen? All right, seeing none, are there any representative parties that have any questions for Mr. Bergen? Seeing none, Mr. Gray, you may call your next witness.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lee Moore. I'm a property owner in Corolla. My address in my other life is 11436 Glenmont Road, Richmond, Virginia. So I have a second home here in the Whalehead subdivision at 1022 Whalehead Drive. I am here to talk about noise. I am the president of East Coast Entertainment. We have been in business since 1976. I've been there since 1978, so I have 33 years of experience. We book outdoor concerts and festivals and parties from Florida to Maine, all the way west to the Mississippi. We do several thousand of these every single summer, and we do them in all types of different facilities, in neighborhoods, in downtown areas where people live, in parks, all over the place. We are the only way that we end up staying in business and that this works for folks long term, 33 years, is if we make everybody happy. It's very important to us that we monitor and take care of noise concerns. We are currently confident that we'll be able to adhere to the county noise ordinances, and we based on the site and the way the thing has been laid out, there is what I call a buffer. You guys have a burn, another name for it. First of all, this amphitheater is facing the Heritage Park. It's facing a non-residential area. The closest there is nobody immediately on either side or in front of it. So all the noise is going in that direction. For every 25 feet that you send sound out of an amplified system, it drops off by 6 dB. Every time you double that, it drops off by another 6 dB. So if your decibel level goal is to be X at the end of the property, every time it travels, it drops off. So basically, we've looked at this and we've talked to the promoter, and we are totally confident that there won't be any issue in adhering to the county noise ordinance. We actually have encouraged, and it was purchased, there actually is a dB meter that will be on site to keep track of this. So there won't. So in a nutshell, we'll be able to monitor at the edge of the property exactly what the decibel level is, and be able to adjust the sound if necessary in order to adhere to that. Okay? I could go on and on and on, but I want to stop and see if you have any questions so far.
Any questions from Mr. Moore from the board?
One, if I would, Mr. Attorney. The decibel ratings here in the county, I believe it's 80 decibels, or anything over 80 is construed to be too loud.
It's our understanding it's 80 at the edge of the property.
Okay, it's 80. All right, and that is not a problem as far as with the venues that, I mean, the different acts that you will bring in, bands, etc.
We have, the beauty of dealing with professional musicians and sound companies is you can control the volume. And the promoter has agreed that he was going to basically be able to monitor that as we go. So there shouldn't be any problem.
Thank you.
I mean, from my perspective in discussions up to this point, that's what we've discussed.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Yes, I have one. You state that the amphitheater is going to be facing towards the west, so the noise will be traveling from east to west.
The majority of it.
Okay, the majority. That brings up my next question. What do you project the decibel levels will be on the east side of that property?
Well, it all depends. Honestly, it all depends on the final approval. I mean, when you get behind the entertainment and you go backwards, the only thing shooting in that direction is the monitors, which is the little speakers on the floor shooting back at the musicians so they can hear what's going on. A lot of these guys now have in-ear monitors, so it depends on the act. That's a very small speaker. I would imagine you would have no problem at the back of that property with that same 80 decibels. As a matter of fact, it'd probably be a lot less than that. I can't tell you specifically because every time I've been brought into this discussion, the plans have changed. So, but there's no question it'll be 80 or less in the backside of the part, where the residential part is.
Well, the thing that concerns me a little is 80 decibel, yes, that's the county ordinance. However, when people come down on vacation, they're looking for some peace and tranquility, and 80 decibel is not something I would like to be listening to until 12 o'clock at night or those types of things. I mean, that's just the point.
Well, I understand that. I mean, I want to, you guys, please, you can go online and look this up. Right now, I'm talking at about 65 decibels. Actually, it's a lot louder because of this. Right now, I'm talking at about 65 decibels. So just between this and 80, I mean, you just have to kind of keep this in mind. I mean, that's the one reason we've talked about this a lot. I mean, we do these things all over the country, and most venues have a decibel limit in most cities and most counties and most fairs and festival sites of 100 or not, somewhere between 90 and 100 at the edge of the site. So sorry, just trying to use the demo. So your level is much lower than I'm used to, but we are, going to do our best to try to. I mean, there's no reason why we can't make that work. It's about turning a knob.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I have attended a few concerts in my day.
Can you still hear?
And
younger day.
Yeah, my younger day. And the next day, my ears would still be ringing from some of them. But those were the days. How often do you plan on presenting entertainment? I think that's as much a factor as noise. If you're doing it once a week, on Saturday night, that's a little bit different than doing it Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, every night. So, and it's a little different if you're going to do some afternoon concerts versus starting at 8 o'clock at night. And I guess my question would be is what kind of times are we looking at with some of the concerts and how often? I think that's a fair question to be answered.
Well, I can tell you again, it's a work in progress because we don't have a site yet and we don't have everything approved. But we've discussed doing family events during the day, discussed doing children events during the day. We discussed doing everything from church services to wedding events there. So if it were my property, I would want to use it as much as possible once I got it up and running. And I think the issue is really about using it responsibly as opposed to how often do you use it. I mean, as a property owner, I really want to speak to this, and I wasn't going to, but I really want to. I've invested in a house there in 1999. I love the place, absolutely love it. Best beaches on the planet. As my kids went from being young to being teenagers to being older, I'm an empty nester now, there was temptation, vacation-wise, to go elsewhere. Myrtle Beach, Colonial Beach, Dewey, anywhere that had something to do, because there's nothing to do down here. Go-karts, it's really exciting sometimes. But as your kids get older, if you're a tourist coming in there, there's really nothing to do. So from my perspective, the opportunity to have shows, something to do in the evening after the beach is no longer where you want to be, is fantastic. Our family reunion every year is July 4th. And I'm sure you guys have been to the Whalehead Club on July 4th. There are 10,000 people down there. It's way louder than 80 dB at the property edge. But it's fun, and it's families, and there's all kinds of great stuff going on. That we come that week because of that event. I mean, I don't know how many other people end up in that situation. So I don't know why you would want to restrict the number of nights that you have entertainment that will entertain and be in my opinion, a vacation enhancement tool, as these concerts in these other cities are used to draw people downtown. They're used to draw people to communities. They're used to.
Let me clarify myself. I'm not talking about limiting use. I'm talking about types of use. There is a difference between a violinist and Ted Nugent. And there's just a difference that's what I'm talking
Right,
about.
I understand.
Ted Nugent at 10 o'clock at midnight, it's a lot different than Yo-Yo Mom or whatever the guy is.
Yeah, Mom.
Right, I understand. The intention here is to try to provide a variety of different things. You're going to have this. You're going to have a unique audience here. They're coming in one weekend, they're leaving the next. Your marketing opportunities are going to be limited. There won't be any Ted Nugents. First of all, you can't put Ted Nugent in a 300-seat amphitheater. But the intention is not to have heavy metal rock and roll music there. The intention is to try to have family programming that mom and dad can come listen to and the kids can come listen to and have a good time.
Okay,
So
that's more along the lines of
I thought you were concerned about the frequency as opposed to the content.
Well, if it was going to be that type of stuff, I would be concerned about the frequency, but
Right.
that's more in line what I was trying to get out
Sorry.
of you. Thank you.
Misunderstood the question.
That's okay.
I have one question.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
had just mentioned that it was a 300-seat venue. Is that the proposed?
That's what that's my understanding. Yes, ma'am. Which is not very big.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moore, in your opinion, is this consistent with what we see in other resort areas, this type of entertainment?
Yes, it's actually a lot milder than, you see Ted Nugent in some of the other resort areas, to be quite honest with you, or Molly Hatchet or Marshall Tucker or some of those guys. I don't anticipate any of that going on here. First of all, there's not enough there's not enough capacity to afford to bring anybody like that in there. I think in talking to the developer, we've been talking about family-oriented shows, more regional cover band kind of things, tribute-y things, and things that are fun that'll get people involved. And again, as a property owner, it tickles me to death. I'm sitting there this afternoon watching TV at my house after I got all this sunburn. I need to get out of the sun. And there were 2 ads in 30 minutes about Myrtle Beach and Mayfest. And it irritated me because I'm sitting there thinking, how many of my friends who used to stay at my house are taking their kids and going to Myrtle Beach or going somewhere else? And it happens all the time because there's nothing to do. Sorry. I'm passionate about that park. I'm very excited about the opportunity that comes with taking this area. My wife and I hope to move there eventually when we retire. She's a teacher. She's already been to the charter school meeting. It was at the firehouse a couple weeks ago because she's dying to get involved in that because that's something else that needs to happen, which is not on this agenda. But anyway.
Well, maybe we can take a clue from Mr. O'Neill and have Heavy Metal Week or something.
Yeah, you could do it all in one week and hand out earplugs, but yeah. I don't anticipate any problem with that. That's not going to be consistent, I don't think, with what people are going to want there anyway.
Absolutely.
Beach
Thank you,
music,
sir.
fun stuff,
Any further questions from the staff, from members of the board?
All right, any questions for any represented parties? Mr. Side, you have a question for Mr. Moore?
I do. Do you want me to answer the question?
Yes, please.
Mhm.
My name is Guy Sides. I live at 555 Hunt Club Drive. I'm not an engineer, so the question may be a little
It's okay.
dumb.
Okay,
So let me just ask a dumb question here. We're in a unique environment. We don't have a lot of buffers for sound here, and in fact, the wind blows all the time, either from the east or the west or the north and the south. So, how will your projections of sound be affected by the wind velocity, and particularly for the people that are on the east side of that proposed amphitheater?
That's a great question. Typically, in these situations with a venue this small, everything is pointed towards the center. Okay, so even if the wind can affect the sound, it can travel some. It's not like throwing a piece of tissue up in the air and wondering where it goes. It's going in that direction. Can it go in that direction? Can it go in this direction? Sure. But if we're aiming it, generally we have a sound technician out in the venue somewhere. We're aiming it at him. That's where we're going to go. At the back of the property, it's my understanding there's going to be what I'll call a sand dune, which is the buffer before the road, which will absorb whatever gets that far, some of it, before it goes over. So I don't anticipate any, if it was the storm we had on, was it Saturday? First of all, I wouldn't be out there in the tornado warning, but you'd have to have that 65-mile-an-hour winds for it to really have an adverse effect on that sound direction. It's going to go where it's pointing for the most part, with the exception of a hurricane gale force type wind.
Mr. Gray, do you have any redirect from Mr. Moore based upon that question from Mr. Sides?
No, sir.
All right, you may call your next witness if there are no further questions. Oh. Okay, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Moore, there's a question for you.
Yeah, hi. My name is Bob Schultz. I had a question for you. You said that, the tourists are always looking for something to do, and, they want to go down south, and, they're not staying up north because they need something to do. I was wondering why the tourist in Currituck, keeps increasing, in Corolla and Currituck with nothing to do here. And I'd like you to answer that.
Well, I'm not the expert on tourism, but I will speak to it as a homeowner. There are a significant number of foreclosures in my neighborhood this year. There are a significant number of houses that aren't renting as well as they did 4 years ago. I'm looking to buy another one, actually, because the prices have actually come back down to where you can almost make it work. So I do think people come to this area because of the attractiveness of the beaches. I do think people like the atmosphere. I'm not suggesting that we change the incredible uniqueness that comes with Corolla at all. I'm suggesting we enhance it. I don't want this to be Myrtle Beach. Please don't misunderstand me. I just use that as an example because they've got commercials on TV that I'm watching while I'm sitting here going and remembering parents of children that are friends of ours that are redirecting to other locations because and the number one reason is because there's stuff for their kids to do. So I don't want it to be overly commercialized as a homeowner, as an investor. I want it to be great like it is, but better with some enhancements. Just some, I was at the library with you a couple of weeks ago where the Economic Development Committee came and did their report. And I love what I'm hearing because there's progress. There are things that are happening. They're trying to attract families. They're trying to get the school going. Oh, my God, that would be outstanding. They're trying to do all this stuff in order to take what's great and make it better. I personally feel like this particular development is going to make the whole situation down here better for tourists. And I don't feel like if when I move here in 5 to 10 years, whenever I can retire after this recession, that it's going to take anything away from my investment or my experience.
Mr. Schultz, you have some more questions?
Yeah, I just have one other question. You said these people are looking for something to do, and they want something to do in the evenings, and they're bored in the evenings. I talked to the people that run the golf course at Corolla Light, and they close at 9 o'clock in the evening because there's nobody there to use the golf course. So apparently, I don't see the need that you see. And apparently, the people that run the golf course don't see the need that you see.
Well, they're here if you want.
Excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but that's not a question.
That's right.
He's entitled to have his comments, but I would request that he do it during his time frame.
My question is why aren't people there all night long trying to use the golf course if they want to participate in these type of activities?
That would be a question for somebody else that is here that might know more about the golf course.
Okay. I saw the gentleman here want to ask. Sir, if you come forward and state your name, please.
My name is David Murray. I'm an attorney, and I represent Mr. Jay Seary, who's an adjacent landowner. I just had a couple questions for you. First, what size speakers are going to be out there?
It will depend on who the act is, but they're going to be small. Small being, for the first year, our plan is to have the entertainers bring the speakers. I will tell you that the size of the speaker is totally irrelevant to what's coming out of it. Okay? It's like your boombox can be really loud or it can be really quiet. It all depends on how you turn the knob. If you have a professional sound person that's taking care of that and you're monitoring the sound from the back of the property, which they're voluntarily, they want to do that. They want to make this a good thing for everybody. Then you've got it under control. So whether it's a speaker that's this big or a speaker that's the size of this table, it doesn't matter as long as you're handling it properly.
And there will be subwoofers that are used.
There will be, in some cases, there'll be single speakers. In some cases, there'll be multiple speakers.
And they cause vibrations.
They cause every speaker causes vibrations. That's how they work. They vibrate inside the cabinet.
And is there anything that can be done to stop those vibrations from leaving the property?
Leaving it all together like it's zero?
From going out zero.
Zero. No.
So there will be vibrations going off of the property?
There will be, this is 65 dB, okay? That leaves the property now. Okay, I'm just saying, I mean, I don't know where you're going, but yes,
No, I'm just
there are
asking.
vibrations leaving my mouth and going all the way to the back of the room right now. Is this irritating to you? I'm just asking.
But if it was going on constantly, 65 decibels constantly.
It happens for his next door neighbor when they stand on their patio and they talk to each other like this. It happens on my deck. I have speakers on my deck. I have never had anybody complain about it.
And would you, where you currently live, you said you're a landowner?
Yeah.
Do you have an amphitheater next to your house?
No, but I would be happy if it was being handled responsibly like this, I would have absolutely no problem with it.
With 80 decibels leaving the property?
80 decibels at the edge of the property.
Which the property owners
now,
that are at the edge
but-
of this
but
property
keep in mind-
are adjacent to the property.
Are they back here or are they back over here?
They're right here.
Okay, I said worst case scenario. I said it would
But
not.
we need to have a point of order. If you have questions, please ask
Thank
them. Allow the gentleman to answer, and
All right.
we can move forward.
And an estimate, your estimate
Hmm.
would be at minimum 80 leaving the property?
No, I never said that.
What
Did
was your
anybody
estimate?
hear me say that? I said that the question was asked at the back of the property, would it exceed 80? And I said absolutely no way.
In your estimate, what would the decibel?
I can't answer that. I can't answer that exact number that it'll be because I can't answer how loud you're going to scream at me after this is over.
Is there a range?
Is there a
You're not
range?
gonna scream.
Yeah, it's 40 to 80.
40 to 80
40 is a
decibels?
whisper.
All right, 40 to 80 decibels.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's safe.
Mr. Chairman, before the attorney sits down, could he please show us where the adjoining property is on the big screen? So count them off from the left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7.
It is all the way to the left.
Is he in Corolla Light?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's all the way to my left. He's next to
Oh, is this one?
the wildlife study area, the muskrat area. He lives adjoining that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then that thicket of brushes there is part of what you're proposing would have to remain as a buffer. Yes. Are there other sound dampening things that can be put within those trees? In other words, some kind of sound dampening fence along that area?
Are there? Yes. Sorry. Yes. I mean, is it necessary? If you have an ordinance that says 80 at the property edge, this will be well within that. I'm just for a point of information. Okay. But yes, you could put a whole wall up there if you wanted to.
So,
but it's
clarify in our minds, his house sits to the east of where the amphitheater is going to be sitting, directing the sound westward.
Correct.
Put the pointer where the amphitheater is going to be, Mr. Wooding. Okay, and it's going to be pointing towards the road.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so his house
It's right here.
is directly behind the amphitheater. And what's in between him and the amphitheater? If you could go back to that other picture. Or maybe you're going to show me a better picture.
I was going to say, just for the site plan, that's the amphitheater there.
Okay, and where's the house in relation to that?
That's Mr. Series' lot, correct? Correct.
Okay, so there's going to be a parking lot in between him and the amphitheater.
Yes, sir.
How many feet approximately, do you know?
Maybe about 300 feet.
If I might answer that, the surveyor has indicated it's approximately 240 feet from the back edge of the amphitheater to the easternmost property line, approximately 240. Don't quote me on the exact.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray, do you have any questions for Mr. Moore in light of the questions asked of him a moment ago?
Mr.
Mr. Etheridge has something, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Since it's my property, I thought I'd ask Mr. O'Neill a question personally.
Please state your name and address.
Jay
please.
Siri.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill, is there any studies that you have for us that indicates that sound travels just one way? Is there anything that you can show us that represents what the actual facts are with sound and how it emanates from a amplified system like this, other than your ideas and your thoughts on it?
Professional opinion. No, I don't have anything with me. Absolutely not. I would suggest that you go, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I understand your concern. I really do. But I would suggest you go and put your stereo on the same level we're talking now on your deck, or maybe 240 feet off your deck.
Right.
Turn it up. Point it in the other direction and see what happens. Because you will hear it, kind of, but it's not going to be. In my opinion, it's not going to be something that's, if you're inside, you're not going to hear it.
Right. Well, I appreciate the point of view. There's 6 homes that are lined up right there, not just mine. The taxable assessed value is about $3.5 million worth of assessed value, kind of to Currituck County. And I'm just looking for a little bit more proof other than just your word for it.
Again, I'm going to
Thank you.
simply if he's not asking a question.
Actually, I did ask.
I have his presentation.
I did ask a question. I wanted to know if you had any proof, and that was
You
it.
asked that one.
Thank you. Mr. Etheridge.
I'll waive my question.
Any other questions from Mr. Moore?
I have one. On a nice calm night, I live quite a ways from the highway. Sometimes hear what's probably colloquially known as basin. You know what I'm talking about? Cars going down the road that have big subwoofers in the back of them.
Oh, the music, yes. Oh, yeah.
And it's not. I'm not hearing the music. What I'm hearing is only the bass.
Right.
Right. And propagation of which is very similar to the reason we have very low tones in foghorns. In talking about the quality of the noise, whether it be heavy metal or Yo-Yo Ma or something else like that, is the annoyance factor from my standpoint is the repetitive tone of that bassing over and over again. And I know from studies at the airport, work we've done up there too, is that sound as it rolls over berms actually tends to diffract. It actually hugs the ground. It does, of course, it propagates with the wind, as you already indicated. That would be one of the concerns I would have is when you're having specific types of music, and a lot of popular music today, whether it be rock, country, rap, or anything else, has that repetitive bassing note there.
It's the last one is the worst.
The attenuation of that, to me, would be one of the most significant factors. Can that be addressed in the structural design of the amphitheater, or maybe some kind of shields in the parking lot that would keep that type of noise from propagating back toward those residential properties?
Could it be done? Sure. I'm here to tell you that at these noise levels, what you're hearing is a lot louder coming out of that car than 80 dB. And they come down my street and I hate it. Not here, but at home. And I'm amazed those people can hear because they're coming out 125, 135. It's crazy. When you get was it Def Leppard? Who was it that you were talking about?
Ted Nugent.
Ted Nugent. When you get if you're sitting in the first 6 rows of that concert, you're hearing probably 130 dB. They just are crazy. I mean, and people go there for that. That's not what we're trying to do here. So to answer your question, yes, you could build a wall around the whole amphitheater and a roof on it and keep all the noise in. I don't think that that's really, from my experience, having done thousands of these shows in hundreds of facilities all the way through North Carolina and Virginia and Florida and Georgia and all over the place, once it gets up and running, we don't have a problem 99.9% of the time. There may be somebody that gets upset, that would get upset if the neighbors were talking on the porch. In this particular site, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. I don't think they could have laid it out any better. This couldn't fit it. I don't know of a better spot to put this because of the direction it's shooting in and the fact if you go across that street, you've got the lighthouse over here, the nature center, the Whalehead Club, and the sphere of where this is really going, there's nothing there. And that's where most of that's going to go.
Well, my point essentially was that is an issue that can be addressed. And in that particular case, it's not just necessarily the loudness of the music, but the specific frequencies that are being generated.
You are correct in stating that if it's a really loud low end, that it will carry. Okay, but it will stay within the guidelines that are, or the, I don't know if it's a guideline or an ordinance that says 80 dB at the property line, but if there was a rap group in there going, which I don't anticipate that either, but you never know. I mean, I'm not saying that 10 years from now there won't be a rap group in there, but the current plans are not to go in that direction. But if there's one in there and they were just to turn that bass up, it would still have to be over that 80 dB for it to really, really carry. But the low end does carry more. It does tend to resonate more than the high end. So that is correct. But what the example used of the car is when I was going through and looking this stuff up, just checking out the OSHA and the other people that check dB levels, they were talking about being inside a car and listening to traffic noise outside your car with the windows shut, and that's 85 dB. So, you know, I'm trying to give you some frames of reference. It's not going to be piercing Ted Nugent rap group crazy. And there's nobody close enough that's not being, there's nobody close enough that's going to be affected. And you're definitely within the guidelines or ordinances that you guys have already got on the books. Well within them. As far as my understanding is concerned of what's there.
One of the things that the Whalehead Club is considering is an amphitheater. And based on where this one is, right across from the road, now, you know, I'm getting concerns if we have competing amphitheaters, because I know the Whalehead Club is looking to do one, and they'll be 500 yards apart, I'm thinking. And I have concerns about this. And also, this amphitheater business, this is going to be your business, and you're going to run it, and you'll make money off of it.
I'm going to help provide the entertainment for the time being, and as long as I do a good job.
Okay, but I mean, you're there to make an income also.
I hope so.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just not directed to you, but I have concerns about two amphitheaters in the same area.
Again, every 25 feet it drops off 6 dB. I don't know, 500 feet. I can't do the math. But it's not going to be as. And I don't know which way the Wellhead Club Amphitheater is going to face. I don't know if there are any plans in place for that.
One of the things, Commissioner O'Neill talked about concerts. I used to go to concerts too, and the last one I went to, I left, and I could hear it better in the parking lot at the Virginia Beach Amphitheater. And a thing that concerns me is there's an old saying about bands: if you're not good, be loud.
That's why we're only bringing good bands into.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, you know, I'm just. I have.
No,
let
me tell you something. Seriously, if you were going to allow like kids that practice in the garage to come in there and do this, or people, you know, we deal with professional entertainers. We do some of these same bands do wedding receptions.
Okay,
so no, I hear you. And at the Virginia Beach, I'll be at the amphitheater twice in the next 2 months. One time I'll be on the 5th row, and you know, I'm hoping that I'll be okay when I come out of there. But those are huge facilities with massive PAs, and they don't have. I'm sure there's a noise restriction down there of some variety, but I'm sure it's governed by something different than what you guys have. What you have is very, very conservative, based on my experience.
Okay, Mr. McCree.
All right, Mr. Gray, your next witness.
As far as other witnesses, that will be it. I think we've already presented the evidence into what the staff has already presented to you and what you already have, and then we've tendered the experts. So I think that will be all that we'll do at this time. I will reserve the right to do rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? We've only heard from one person from Corolla Light. Have we talked to management from Corolla Light, what their stance is?
Certainly.
Yes, my name is Rick Willis, Vice President of Outer Banks Ventures. Specifically, what part of our stance, I could talk about what the direction of this facility is intended to be, or
no, I'm just asking, has the management, the property management team given you a blessing or commented one way or the other about your project?
I've had numerous discussions with various people in Currituck, including members of their board, and I believe that there's people that are associated with the community association here tonight. So I don't know if they're going to speak or not. They have, you know, I don't believe there's a formal position that's being taken.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm sorry, the attorney, is it Mr. Murray?
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything that you like, any evidence you'd like to present on behalf of your client?
Yes, I would. Actually, Mr. Siri, in the interest of time.
If you come forward and to the microphone, please.
I'll just start off briefly, members of the board, and just say that on a special use permit, the applicant has to meet every step that is required under y'all's ordinance in order to get the special use permit issued. And when you look at what the planning board did, they recommended denial because it was in a residential neighborhood. It's still in a residential neighborhood. Lighting, the lighting is going to be going on. There's going to be parking vehicles, headlights. Question about parking. The hours of operation, again, if I believe in your minutes, there's some discussions about the noise and the hours of operation, that if a special use permit is granted, that there's some exemptions under your ordinance that the board has to put certain restrictions on. And they have stated in their testimony that they want to have these events at nighttime. And so if they're having them at night, then that's when people are going to be in their house getting ready to settle down, and they're going to have the vibrations leaving the property and the noise leaving the property. And they haven't given you any kind of evidence to show how they will prevent any kind of noise or any kind of vibration leaving the property. It's still across from Heritage Park, and it's not in harmony with the area. And the other issue is, under the ordinance, it has to show that it will not injure adjoining property owners. You have to present competent evidence, and under North Carolina law, a landowner can testify to the value of his property and whether he thinks the value of that property is diminished by what is taking place next to him. And if you put an amphitheater with 150 parking spaces in a gravel parking lot, there are 2 dumpsters at the edge of that property too, and it's hot outside, there could be odor leaving, dust, all those issues that will have to be dealt with. And so I will let Mr. Siri give his testimony. He has an affidavit for the record that will go to the clerk that pretty much outlines his opinion of what he thinks the diminished value of his property is. Also, he has some pictures that show when you're standing on his back porch that you will be able to see the parking lot. You'll be able to see what's going on behind his property, because the properties are pretty tight up against the property of the back property lines. And also you can see in that plat that part of the actual tree buffer that is currently there is inside that parking lot. So the buffer is going to be knocked down more than what it actually shows currently. And because of that, there's going to be less brush back there. There's going to be less of a buffer, and there's already a gap in the natural buffer that you can see, and you'll be able to see straight through to the parking lot. The other issue is, if you run out of parking there, when you have an amphitheater, people are going to want to park on this gravel road that's next to it. And he's on the corner of this gravel road, and there may be people parking right next to his house in the back. And so these are all concerns that Mr. Siri will testify to. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask him.
Mr. Moore, do you have a copy of Mr. Siri's affidavit for the applicant's attorney, please?
Should I introduce this now at this point?
Certainly. Let me just explain to the board. As I say in the introduction to special use permits, typically an affidavit in and of itself would not be admissible for you to make, at least for you to make a critical finding of fact relative to this application. However, in this instance, of course, the affiant, Mr. Siri, the maker of the affidavit, is indeed here and present and can be questioned by the applicant's attorney or others. and therefore I would submit that anything that may be in the affidavit would be competent material evidence, but of course it is subject to examination by the applicant's attorney, Mr. Gray, or any others in attendance. You may proceed.
Should I introduce it at this point?
Yes, you may send it to the clerk.
Thank you for letting me speak here tonight. I appreciate the time. This is certainly a very important issue for me. I purchased a home in 2008, certainly with the intention of this being a retirement home property for me within the next few years. So the peacefulness and the serenity of this community, and the reason I purchased this home, is the reason I purchased in Corolla Light, and the reason I'm here tonight to certainly trying to protect it. I understand the reason to support business in Currituck County. I certainly understand it. The objection is not the business, it's the location. This proposition will put this business directly inside a residential community, which is the reason why the planning board committed it or denied it. And the 6 adjoining homes, just from the Currituck County website, just from the tax assessment, there's about $3.5 million worth of homes there, right there. And just the constant noise, I mean, I know we've all been to concerts, I certainly have to. It's hard for me to believe, in fact, it's impossible for me to believe, the sound is only going to travel in one direction. I mean, I think we all know, probably everyone in this room here knows, that sound is going to emanate in every possible direction. It's going to be going on, from Mr. O'Neill's testimony, from morning, noon, until night. There's going to be a minimum of 150 cars that are going to pull in that parking lot every night. And if you notice, my home is right on the corner. So those lights coming around that corner are going to shine right into my house. And then that, with the combination of the overhead lighting, it's going to light up my home, the Harrison's home right next door, and the other homes up every night until they turn them off around 11 or 12 o'clock at night. That's not why I purchased the home. That's certainly not why I moved to Corolla Light. One of the comments regarding the existing commercial property, that it did not injure the value of my property. There was already existing commercial property there. That existing commercial property that you have already seen on the overhead charts is not in eyesight. It's not visible from my property. It's not visible during the day. It's not visible during the evening. I can't hear it. It's approximately a quarter of a mile away from my property. So during the day, during the night, it's not there. I don't see it. If you approve this and put this here, that's all I'm going to see every day and every night. So that's why I'm asking, that's why the planning board committed, that's why I'm asking you to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from Mr. Siri by members of the board? Commissioner Petrie.
When you're on your back deck now and you're looking out, what do you see?
Right now, I see, and the pictures here will actually show it. And I apologize. I thought I was going to be able to show a PowerPoint presentation that had pictures off my back deck, so that would actually give a nice indication of what I actually see. The only thing I see are the trees and the buffer behind my home. That's it.
You can't see the plant, the wastewater plant?
No. I can see a part of a shed, but 95% of what I see there is just, okay, there we go. That's outside my bedroom window.
I didn't realize they were yours. But,
yeah, well, thank you. That's I appreciate that. I thought I'd take this picture because pictures are worth 1,000 words. So this is out my bedroom window, and as you can see right now, there is no commercial development that I could see. But in the evenings, when these cars come in every night, their headlights are going to be shining in my bedroom window right through here each and every night. Do you have another picture there? That's off the side of my deck. As you can see a little partial piece of what's taking place there. But as soon as they cut down, right where that corner of that fence is essentially where the parking lot's going to start, in the fence in the parking lot. Regardless of how you put the lights up, as you can see, there's about a 6 foot, if you go one more forward, there's about a 6 foot height advantage from my driveway to the top of where this parking lot's going to be. So then you add the overhead lights each night, it's just going to shine down and it's going to light it up every night. Here I'm actually standing in the parking lot.
Your home elevated above?
It's actually below.
Okay.
About 6 feet below. Okay. And you can see I'm standing in the parking lot, and as you can picture, these cars are going to be pulling into this parking lot directly into the back of my house, and that's where all the bedrooms are. You can go back one more, Ben, if you don't mind. No, backwards. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's the height advantage. So you see, there's my home, the driveway, and essentially that's where the parking lot will start. about 6 feet up right there.
Could you go, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Can we ask a question?
Yes.
Could you go back to the one of his house where he said he's standing in the parking lot?
There you go.
Is your bedroom window visible in that?
Yes, 2 of them are. The master bedroom is on the top right, and one of the other guest rooms is on the bottom right.
Because the reason I asked you that question, when you said about from your bedroom window showed trees, previous couple of.
There. Yeah, I'm actually looking to the left. So yeah, there's the trees to the right, and I actually took the
So
camera.
how can we see the house from the parking lot? Well, you can't see the parking lot with that shot.
Well, my point is those trees, that's where the parking lot was going to start. And that was going to be the view out of my bedroom window.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill?
Mr. Woody, there were 6 houses along there. Have we heard from the other 5 property owners?
I want to say there was at least one more at the planning board, and it appears some others are back there.
I mean, do we have anything written?
Well, we wouldn't accept that because we tell folks because it's a special use permit, they have to come here and testify to you directly. So no, we haven't forwarded any emails or anything for property owners to the board.
Okay, but if this were approved, as it goes through TRC can require more vegetative buffers and can require some kind of fencing there if it's necessary.
TRC cannot. The minimum, or the UDO actually would allow them to clear all those trees out of there and leave nothing. So what we're asking the board to do is at a minimum, at least create a 25-foot undisturbed buffer area. So we're asking you to.
But as part of that, if it was approved, can the board not require some type of more buffer?
Yes. If you establish additional buffering tonight, then the TRC can enforce that after this meeting.
So you could establish more trees.
Yes.
And you could establish some kind of a fencing or something that's
absolutely.
pervious.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excuse me, one other point I'd like to make. My value, or what I believe the value or the economic impact of my home, I've purchased and sold 10 homes over the course of several years, certainly. And based on my experience in the local marketplace and what I believe will take place, I believe it'll affect my home value about 25%. And that's a cause for concern. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity to put a buffer in. My concern is you can buffer some of the lights that are coming in, but you're not going to be able to buffer the sound. And truly, between the two, I think they're equally destructive. So I have pictures that you all have seen here tonight. Mr. Woody was nice enough to show them for me. I'd like to admit these as well, too, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Siri from members of the board? If not, Mr. Gray, do you have any questions for Mr. Siri?
Just a couple.
If you please come to the microphone.
Sure. I always thought I was loudmouth and nobody needed a microphone for me. Mr. Siri, as I understand it, you bought in October of 2008, is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
All right. Now, at the time you bought, there was in front of you, and you knew that was in front of you, a sewage treatment facility, is that correct?
Actually, behind me, but yes, I knew that too.
To the west of you?
Correct.
Where this project is looking about, where we're looking to do this project, correct? Now, at the time you bought, what use did you make of your property? You rented it, did you not?
I did not.
You don't rent it now?
Never have, sir.
You've never rented it?
I have never rented it.
Okay. Do you live here? Do you live here permanently?
I do not live here permanently.
You use it as a second home?
That's correct.
All right. Can you tell me how many weeks you used that property last year?
Between my wife, my family, my children, we probably used it about 16 weeks to 20 weeks per year.
What's the name of the development that you bought in?
Coral Lane.
What's its full name, do you know?
No, but perhaps you want to fill that in for me?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last question.
I'm sorry, I asked him if he knew the name of the development that he bought in.
Yes.
And he indicated Corolla Light, and I asked him if he knew the full name, and he answered no.
All right.
I wasn't aware that was part of the special use permit, so my apologies.
Any other questions for Mr. Seary? All right, if not, then,
I have a quick.
I'm sorry, Mr. Murray.
Has the wastewater treatment plant ever affected your use and enjoyment of the property?
No. If it did, I would never purchase a home. I knew it was there before I purchased a home.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think there'll be opportunity for
Can
any
I
other.
ask one more question, Mr. Siri? Yes, sir.
Mr. O'Neill?
Mr. Siri, did you know that that was commercial property behind you when you bought your home?
I did not know it was zoned that way, no.
Thank you.
Chairman, I don't know if you have the sign-up list, but I think that'd be an opportunity for those, any other persons who wish to present any evidence to come forward and do so at this time. If you have the list, you may want to call on those persons.
Okay, the sign-up list. First, we have Bobby Hainig. Please come forward and give your name and address, please.
My name's Bobby Hannig. I live at 102 Orchard Lane. I'm a small business owner, and I do a lot of work in the Corolla area. I come in contact with thousands of guests a year. A lot of times when I'm leaving, I'll say, okay, we'll see you next year. A lot of times I get, well, we're not going to come back next year. There's really much for the kids to do. I think this development that they want to do is in a resort area, and when people come to a resort, they want things to do, and I think it's going to be a real benefit to the area. That's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Gray or Mr. Murray? All right, thank you.
Next, we have Bob Schultz. I would ask everyone if they would please try to keep their comments to 3 minutes.
Sure. I'm Bob Schultz, okay. As you know, I wear many different hats, okay. The hat I'm putting on this evening is the Homeowners Association President for Monterey Shores, okay. Our biggest concern is the water treatment plant, that this is going to really affect us because of the number of taps, okay, that water treatment plant has. As you know, we had a 7-year moratorium, okay, on building between 2003 and 2009. It decreased the county revenues because we couldn't build, so you couldn't get taxes, okay, you couldn't get occupancy tax. So, this cost us, our homeowners, money because they couldn't build, okay. The current need for Monterey Shores is, designated by the Utilities Commission, is 313,000 to 317,000 gallons per day for the service area. Okay, that's what we've been allowed by them. Okay, if this water treatment from Corolla Light comes down there, it's usurping our gallons that we were allotted. Okay, the storage capacity for this plant since the upgrade is 520,000 gallons per day. Okay, Monterey Shores Phase 1 and Phase 2 has been allotted 173,596 gallons per day. Buck Island, Timbuktu is 93,966 gallons per day. Corolla Bay is 200,000 gallons per day with an excess capacity of 12,000 gallons per day for that plant. Okay, Corolla Light transfers these services down to Monterey Shores. Then what happens when Monterey Shores needs these taps? Okay, there's nothing available for Monterey Shores. Monterey Shores, again, goes into a moratorium. We've been in a moratorium for 7 years, and we've had major problems with the moratorium. Okay, this situation is not amenable to the homeowners of Monterey Shores. Okay, it's a loss in revenue for you as a board for your property tax, your occupancy tax, and your permit and license fees. The result is you will lose monies, okay, by permitting this and letting these people use Monterey Shores treatment facility for their wastewater. Okay, there is a solution, however, and I offer this to the board, and they can use this as part of their solution. I would recommend that the developer put $5 million in escrow to build his new plant to ensure that Monterey Shores has the capacity when Monterey Shores needs it. And that way, we have the money in escrow to build the plant and have the facility that we need for our wastewater treatment so that we don't go into a moratorium again. Any other questions?
A question of Mr. McCree. Does Currituck County Commissioners have any say in where the wastewater capacity is allocated? I mean, do we use that as a consideration when that's a state requirement, a state permit, and the Utilities Commission as a quasi-judicial body would make those decisions?
Certainly, the Division of Water Quality has jurisdiction over wastewater permits. And I look to Mr. Woody to correct me if I'm wrong, but also you need to take into consideration that as you have approved plan unit developments and other development within the Corolla area in particular, you have taken into account representations made by those developers over time as to how their wastewater would be treated, how many gallons per day would be necessary to meet their wastewater needs, and where that wastewater is going. So remember, you have already taken into consideration and approved plan unit developments based on those representations. So to the extent that this might be a differentiation from that which has been represented to you into the past and that which you and other boards have relied upon in issuing development permits, I think it is incumbent upon you to take that into consideration, certainly.
Okay, I'll ask it another question. Is DWQ going to allow someone to take capacity that's allocated to other developments?
I think what Mr. Woody has represented to you tonight is that DWQ would, in this instance, for example, allow for allocation that is, I guess, understood to be required by already approved subdivisions to go into the Monterey Shores plant. But it sounds like it will be contingent upon this applicant constructing the necessary wastewater treatment facilities in order to assure that persons who have already been allocated treatment through the Monterey Shores plant will not be lacking at the time that they need those gallons per day.
Okay, so do we have staff that makes those determinations and tells DWQ how to allocate the resources?
I think we have experienced, particularly over the last year, the difficulty in the county staff as we have reviewed necessary wastewater treatment in various developments on the Outer Banks. We've had a difficult time, quite frankly, getting DWQ to address some of the concerns that the county has expressed. For example, we still have in one development an ongoing question about green space, which has yet to be answered and resolved. And you remember that application from last April. I mean, that is something that planning staff is certainly aware of. They have opened a number of avenues of communication with DWQ to make sure that there is a better exchange of information. I think DWQ is now much more attuned to what is going on in Corolla than it was before, and so I suspect that you would have to rely upon that, a line of communication between your planning staff and DWQ to assure that wastewater needs that have been allocated or are required for development on the Outer Banks will be there when called upon.
Let me ask it another way. Do we have authority over DWQ?
We do not have authority over DWQ.
Thank you.
May I ask of the attorney, can we require a $5 million be put in escrow to defend, Monterey Shore's desire for some protection against losing their wastewater?
You have the ability to place reasonable conditions upon use of the property. I don't think that requiring a $5 million bond would be an appropriate condition required by this board for that purpose.
Another question. The guarantee that these people in Monterey Shores are looking for, can staff put that in this special use permit, that they be protected in some way?
Well, again,
as far as the disposal of the wastewater.
I think what I'm hearing from what Mr. Woody represented to the board in his presentation and what DWQ has provided to staff is that when the wastewater treatment capacity at Monterey Shores reaches a certain percentage of treatment per day, that there would then be the requirement of this applicant to construct the necessary wastewater treatment facility to provide for that additional need.
Was that not answering his concerns then?
I have one question.
I'd like an answer first. Is that not answering
I
his
don't know whether that
concerns?
satisfies Mr. Schultz or not.
No, sir, it doesn't.
I'm asking staff, does that satisfy his concerns that there will be a requirement that wastewater treatment capacity is built? You just said it. I'm trying to confirm that, in fact, the applicant would have to build excess capacity if, in fact, we get to that position.
I can't answer that tonight, and I'll tell you why. We've been pushing DWQ for a position on this because we want to make sure, we want to ensure to the best of our local abilities that Monterey Shores is protected. What I have from DWQ is this. At this point, they've said that this allowance, they'll send the flow to Monterey Shores provided that proper modifications are made to permits, that there's an inclusion of permit conditions in the modified Monterey Shores permit that provides protection to the prior designees, protection to the other people that are flowing into it. I don't know what those conditions are yet, so I can't answer that. Until I see the actual permit conditions that DWQ sets forward, I can't tell you tonight that the protections are adequate or not. But ultimately, what you said is correct. DWQ is a regulatory agency on this. So the question is, do we want to wait and see those permit conditions? Or do we want to issue the use permit tonight and then hope for the best and work through them when the permit conditions are put forward?
Have we requested them?
Yes.
How long ago?
April 4th. I'll tell you the truth, we didn't know that the flow was going to Monterey Shores until March 28th, 2011. But again.
But DWQ has said they would require him to upgrade to take care of the additional flows.
They have. They're aware of this, but I just don't know what those DWQ requirements are sitting here tonight. Now, maybe Mr. Bergen's worked closely with them. Maybe he needs to get up and provide some information on this.
Well, I can tell you right now, I certainly would not approve anything that jeopardized Monterey Shores. But I'm not going to insert myself in the state agency that permits this either and insert my judgment when they are the ones in charge of it. And if they're saying they're going to require it, then
and that's their responsibility. They've said they're going to require it. I don't know what that is, but they have said that. That's a correct statement.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Etheridge.
Mr. Schultz, you said the capacity of the existing Monterey plant today
Yes, sir.
is 500,000.
520,000, sir.
Okay, and you say that 508,000 of it is already committed.
Everything but 12,000 has been committed.
That's 508,000.
Yes, sir. You're right.
Is there not a trigger point at which expansion of facilities must be undertaken? 80%, is it not, Mr. Woody? Or if anybody else can answer me.
Design is at 80, construction's at 90.
So they're already at that point today with allocations they've made.
I think that calculation is based on flows.
So when can we expect the flows then from like Corolla Bay? I mean, are we being asked tonight to hold up what ifs when we've got something here that is standing in front of us? Are we being asked to say no because this is out here in the future somewhere that might happen when we've got a sure thing here tonight?
As Attorney has mentioned, you've already approved subdivisions that allocate that 520,000 has already been allocated by previous approvals that the Board of Commissioners has made. Those flows just not materialize because as they phase out or as they've been built, the actual flows are not at the plant. But the actual flows are what will drive the 80%, 90% rule.
So if we don't accept what Mr. O'Neill is saying, the state agency is saying they're going to do it and require it, then we could be sitting here 10 years from now still waiting for the realized flows to make a decision on this application tonight.
Or an alternate wastewater solution would have to be tendered before the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Mr. Petrie.
Is there a person, a company, is it Monterey Shores that's committed to this capacity that hasn't been developed yet? I mean, at some point in time, let's say we approve this tonight, and then the capacity is needed for Monterey Shores. Who owns that capacity? I mean, when you say we've approved developments that's using capacity of this Monterey Shores plant, but it hadn't been used yet, who is it that's going to call in the chips if it's not expanded? Am I getting my point across here? At some point in time, somebody's going to call in the chips, and if the chips aren't there, and we've committed, the staff and the county has committed to future growth, and it's not there, is the county going to be held accountable for approving things that can't be delivered?
Or
I hope I asked that right.
Or building a plant of our own.
I don't think the county, first of all, will be required to build a plant of its own to meet the allocated needs or the approved subdivisions or plan unit developments that have been approved thus far. I think when the time comes well, I think the allocation, if it belongs to anyone, may well be, you could say, Carolina Water. Carolina Water is the utility that is made some obligation or representation, again, to this Board of Commissioners by and through the applicant who received approval for their projects, that there is wastewater available to serve the needs required of that project when it is built out. And so I suspect that the applicants or the developers of those particular projects would look to Carolina Water first as their utility provider who represented them that they have the ability to provide wastewater as a first course. I do not, again, though, think the county is obligated.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if y'all will go to the recommended requirement number 3, it speaks to every bit of this. It says a copy of the NC DENR modified permits or authorized permitted green area, utility map areas, and easements that affect this property must be provided, yada, yada. Written agreement from Carolina Water, utility provider, and Outer Banks Ventures, applicant securing the wastewater treatment and disposal of current demands and vested future allocation. The written agreement shall provide the following minimum information: a comprehensive description of current and proposed wastewater treatment and disposal operations and upgrades for Corolla Light PUD, Buck Island PUD, and Monterey Shores PUD. A comprehensive analysis of the current and proposed wastewater allocations for Corolla Light, Buck Island, and Monterey Shores. The analysis shall include all allocations provided by Carolina Water for future users. Does that not say that it has to be done? DWQ saying it, and now we're saying as part of the approval, all of his concerns have to be answered. Is that not what one of the recommendations is?
It is a safeguard that staff put in there to make sure we have the information. The one I've said earlier, I don't know what the actual permit conditions are going to be from DWQ, but yes, I feel like we've gone as far as we can go to protect the county's interest and the citizens' interest in wastewater. But,
okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Next, we have Barbara Marzetti.
I just want to cede my minutes to Mr. Schultz.
We have next Karen Galgansky. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Karen Galgansky. I live at 873 Welk Court in Monterey Shores in Corolla. I'm here basically because I am very concerned about too many questions and too many unanswered questions, even with regard to the special use permit application in and of itself. We've gone over basically the most important, which is the allocation of the wastewater. As Mr. Woody and Mr. Scanlon can testify, we have years and years had to go through arduous stuff to just try to get the moratorium out. And in doing so, NCUC very plainly put in several orders, one of which was September 8th in 2004, allocating these GDs to specific PUDs. So that is an unanswered question. That is one that needs to be answered. The others questions are for noise. I did hear testimony that says, well, I think the noise is this. The decibels, if I do this, is like this. I don't have a meter here. I'd like something in writing that says where it travels. We have much open space, and a pin drop travels there. I can hear it in Monterey Shores. I can hear things happening in Whalehead in Monterey Shores in the evening. I don't think that testimony that was given of we need to bring people here, we need to have this, we have to have this built, that should not be relevant in this. All that should be before him is it in harmony? Is he doing what he is supposed to be doing in accordance to the application, of which I do not see the testimony answering the questions. I hear the plans have changed, I believe. I wrote this down as he spoke. I don't anticipate, well, it depends, worst case scenario, the current plans may change, should not be a problem. Most probably, approximately, this is a work in progress. These are not answers to these questions. Noise, lighting, parking, the wastewater treatment, all of those have to be answered or should be answered, and as well as the facts and findings found by both staff and planning board should be considered and maybe even amplified. Until you get the most important answers to all these questions, I don't think the special app should even be considered. I'm not saying I am for it, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just very concerned that something can be brought forward, have this many unanswered questions without anything in writing or an expert testimony being given, and still the probability of nothing happen will happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Alicia McDonald.
Good evening. My name is Alicia McDonald. I live at 965 Sunset Crescent in Monterey Shores. I have been in Monterey Shores through the moratorium. The moratorium ended in 2009. This is 2011. We haven't even passed 2 years yet, and we're worried about the waste treatment plant at Monterey Shores. When I initially was reading about this project, I thought it just meant any water or sewage, any sewage or effluent that was going to be produced from this project would be transferred down to the Monterey Shores plant. What I didn't realize was that it is all of Corolla Light that is going to go to Monterey Shores. And Corolla Light is not all built out. So if Mr. Schultz says that there's only 12,000 gallons per day not allotted, and you're going to put Corolla Light plus this project into the Monterey Shores plant, all T's better be crossed and all I's better be dotted, or we're going to have another moratorium problem, and it's in the future, and it's going to be we're going to have another 7 years of trying to figure out what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Guy Sides.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Guy Sides. I live at 555 Hunt Club Drive in Corolla. I'm not like Mr. Gray. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just standing up here talking this evening. I want you to know that I'm not opposed to development. But there are some issues that are important to me when it comes to development. I favor development that's well thought out. I favor development that's compatible with the community. I favor development that doesn't disadvantage existing communities. And I favor development that doesn't jeopardize current and future tax base of this county. The proposal before you this evening doesn't meet those criteria. First, in terms of being well thought out, this is the fourth proposal that's been brought forward for this development. And you heard this evening about all the unanswered questions associated with it. Even though the planning staff is attempting to button things down, there are still things that are uncertain about this. In fact, at the first planning board meeting, Mr. Willis asked the planning board to either approve or deny it so that he could come to you and you could decide how it could be used. That's an indication of how well thought out this is. Secondly, in terms of compatibility with the community, as you all know, there is currently a planning, small area planning process that's going on in Corolla. It's not complete, so it's unknown whether this particular development will be compatible with the small area plan. Now, I will say that Mr. Willis was involved in establishing the small area plan, but the process itself is not complete, so we don't know how it's going to fit in. Now, in terms of disadvantaging the community, you heard this evening that one resident believes that his property values will decline by 25%. It's clear that this kind of development could not only affect property values in and of itself, but it can also jeopardize potential rentals because of where that's located. You may hear about that later on. The other major issue has to do with sewage. We've spent a lot of time talking about sewage tonight. I want to be clear. It's not wastewater, it's sewage. And how the sewage is processed and who processes it. The proposal that is being made tonight is to use existing capacity that's already been allocated in order to process the sewage from Corolla Light. That process may, in fact, jeopardize future developments in Monterey Shores. And in fact, I want to remind you that the capacity that's been allocated is not only for Monterey Shores, it's for Corolla Bay, it's for Timbuktu, and it's for Buck Island. All of those areas could be jeopardized if this capacity is inappropriately used. Now, here's the problem with the proposal that's being made. What hasn't been mentioned this evening so far is that the current plant will be idle, will be idle. And a backup position could be, if the additional capacity is needed, that idle plant could be restarted. However, that'll take money. It'll take a financial commitment to restart a plant that currently is outdated. Even if that were done, the next question is, where does the processed effluent go? Because the way this development is working, the water that previously had been dispersed in that property will have to go somewhere else. Now, the next point is, as planning staff has said, we want to make sure that if in fact this moves forward, that we've decided that we're going to build a new plant. Okay, that's all. I think that's clear. Well, there's a couple of questions. Will the permit that's issued at the time this begins be valid at that time? Number two, will the permitting contingencies be met, whatever they may be? And number three, will financing be available to do this? So finally, to my last point about property values, if this moves forward, and in fact the worst happens, it's possible that that will jeopardize the property values in the developments we've talked about, because you will have to do as you've done in the past. You will have to place a moratorium on building, and you'll have to and potentially you could limit the number of people who could occupy those properties that exist at that time. So, in summary, it's not well thought out. It's potentially incompatible with the small area plan. It disadvantages the existing communities. And there's a potential negative effect on existing and future property values. So here's my recommendation. Table this. And table it until certain things are done. Number one, the small area plan process is complete. Then we can determine whether this is compatible with the small area plan. Number two, require an expert opinion, testimony on the effect that this will have on adjoining property values. I might point out to you that in the application that was made, the question was, will this affect adjoining property values? And the answer was no. There was no documentation to support that. According to your rules, that's required. Not just an opinion, but since this is a quasi-judicial process, it requires expert testimony to that effect. Number three, and it's already been done based upon what's been said here, that any diversion of sewage to Monterey Shores the Monterey Shores facility would be properly permitted. And number four, again, require that the developer issue a surety bond in order to be able to finance the building of the new plant, should that be required. Any questions? Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Sides. Next, we have Doug Brindley.
Before Mr. Brindley speaks, can I ask Mr. McCray a question? Mr. Sides brought up the fact that it does not damage adjoining property values. Is that the applicant's responsibility, or is that the opponent's responsibility to provide that expert testimony?
Well, the UDO, of course, provides the 7 findings that you have to be able to make from the evidence presented during the course of the hearing. But as I stated to you at the beginning of this hearing, as provided in Section 14.4 and 11.7.1 of the UDO, the burden of presenting a complete application required by the UDO to the Board of Commissioners is upon the applicant. Once a completed application has been submitted, the burden of presenting evidence to the Board of Commissioners sufficient to lead the Board to conclude the application should be denied shall be upon parties urging denial, unless information presented by the applicant in its application and at the hearing is sufficient to justify a reasonable conclusion that a reason exists to deny the application. So the burden is upon the applicant to submit to you a complete application. Assume that you're able now to find in the evidence that a complete application has been submitted to you, then the burden now shifts to those in opposition to this application to present evidence to you as to why the application should be denied. So yes, the burden would now be shifted to the opposition to provide that particular evidence to you, unless, again, as the UDO provides, there is information presented by the applicant in its own application or other evidence presented during the course of this hearing that will lead you to be able to find that the application should be denied.
Okay, and I have one other question. Is this tract of land included in the Corolla Small Area Plan?
It is in the study area.
It is a part of the study area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what does that study area encompass?
It encompasses the historic Corolla Village, the east and west side of NC-12. It encompasses Currituck, the Lighthouse property, It encompasses Currituck Heritage Park. Then it encompasses these 2 commercial tracts across 12 from Currituck County Heritage Park.
This commercial tract and what other one?
Crawl Lake Town Center, yeah.
Okay, so you can impose upon an already developed commercial area new rules?
A plan is just a policy statement. So if we decided to have architectural standards in Corolla Village, it would apply to for example, the Crawl Lake Town Center once it redeveloped. It would be upon redevelopment.
In the future?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It wouldn't require retrofits.
Mr. Brindley, please give your name and address.
Mr. Eilert, I have one question, Mr. Woody, in that light. In order for the small area plan, if it puts forth suggested recommendations before they could be adopted, would not the land use plan have to be amended to remove this from a full service area?
It would
counter.
If the small area plan was contrary or counter to the land use plan, then yes, we would probably want to look to amend the land use plan. That's correct. I don't think it will be that contrary to it, but if it were, that's a correct statement.
So being this is a full service area, this isn't allowed use.
Currently, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Brindley, please.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm happy to be up here to speak with you all tonight about this project. I live in Southern Shores, and I have a real estate business in Corolla, beautiful downtown Corolla at 1023 Ocean Trail. I have been in this business selling resorts, properties, and renting resort vacation rentals for 27 years, and I have seen it all, and I have experienced thousands upon thousands of guests weekly. Last Thursday, I went to the meeting of the Currituck Tourism Board in Corolla, had a wonderful presentation by the Tourism Board about what their county is doing very effectively to bring additional tourists to the area. This is our lifeblood for thousands upon thousands of jobs for Currituck County residents. This is also the lifeblood for this county, the largest industry we have outside of government. And we do a good job of it here. When I say we, the rental companies and the real estate companies that are operating in the Corolla area. Randall Travel Marketing was commissioned by the county a few years ago to basically study the real estate market, the vacation rental market here in our resort area, and tell us what was needed for the future. And children's activities is one of the top items that they were expressing as an important future feature that should be brought to the area. Brindley Beach Vacations, my company that I'm president of, we put 7,000 heads in beds every single week in Corolla. Now, we're just one company. There's many others up there. So there are so many families coming to the area. Out of all these people that are occupying these homes and enjoying the area, over 60% of them are 16 years of age or younger. You think that they're not ruling the roost on where they go and what the family's enjoying. If the kids are not having fun, mom and dad are not having fun. That's just the way it is. So Corolla Light in 1984 came up with a plan. My father's vision and Rick Willis's hard work over the many years, we came up with an idea that no one else in the Outer Banks had ever done. Let's create a family resort. The name of the development is Corolla Light Resort Village. That's its full name. We develop family attractions, family entertainment, kids' activities every day. And it's the reason why Corolla Light has been successful as a community, attracting vacation rentals, competing with the other communities, because they don't have this. We've got 4-bedroom houses. That would be obsolete in any other market. But in Corolla Light, it's an advantage, and it works. Because of the activities for all the children, this development is actually extremely in harmony with the original plans and the original intent of this resort. We haven't wavered a minute or a moment or an inch away from our original plans. When Currituck County can increase the occupancies in the months of April and May and September and October, it's all going to be a win. Not like Charlie says, but it's all going to be a win. We're going to have increased jobs. We're going to have increased tax revenue. We're going to have increased rental revenues for the homeowners in the area. When we increase that will increase the property values. Some that may take exception to that, but in a real estate appraisal, that's called the revenue approach. So it's one of the key factors on the values of the homes for the entire area. 10% of the resort in Corolla Light was always planned and allowed to be developed as commercial. You don't build a commercial development the first day you open up operations. We were sitting underneath umbrellas swatting flies, wondering if somebody would come by and buy these things. Thank goodness they did. They built beautiful homes for everyone to enjoy. It wasn't intended to be a retirement community. It wasn't intended to be a year-round residential area. It was intended to be Currituck Light Resort Village. Now's the time to build these items that these kids are going to enjoy. We've got the traffic flow, we've got the people to be there, and there's an extreme need for it. Brindley Beach Vacations and the other realtors in the area have been selling properties next to commercial developments in Corolla for years and years and years. Property values have gone up. We had a little bip here in the last few years because of the economy, but they will continue to do so, and we will continue to sell the real estate that's next to these commercial properties, and we'll all win together. So that's my thoughts on our project.
Thank you, Mr. Brindley. Any questions for Mr. Brindley? Thank you, sir.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, Mr. Brindley, as I understood it, you've been in the real estate field for 20. I've been distracted. Bad idea. You've been in the real estate field 27 years. Did I hear that correct?
Started when I was 3.
Okay. You're like my wife. She's 28.
And holding.
And when she's old, never mind.
Never mind, don't go there.
Based on your experiences in selling of properties, will a development of this nature cause a decline in the value of properties in Corolla Light Resort community?
No, it will not.
Why not?
Because this is in harmony with the original development plan. These types of commercial use have always been planned from the very beginning.
Let me ask you another question. There is, in fact, when I point here, you can't see it. I brought my little thingy that points. You don't do it that way.
You can go right there.
To the south of this particular piece of property, there is a a commercial, what is it?
Corolla Light Town Center.
What is that?
That is a grouping of buildings that has a variety of businesses in it, from real estate companies to wild horse tours to vehicle rentals to restaurants to good old retailing, and it's heavily used by the community every day.
All right. To the east of that commercial use is a pond, correct?
Yes.
And just on the other side of the pond, without hardly any trees or vegetation, there's a series of houses.
Correct.
Are you familiar with those houses at all?
Yes, I sold several of them more than once.
All right. Have you seen any decline in the value of those houses by the fact that they are next to that commercial piece of property?
No, they were one of the first ones to sell in the original plan.
That's all. Thank you.
Can you redirect? Yes, sir.
With reference to the Randall Travel Marketing, you reference that, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is a copy of it. Is that the report that you're talking about?
I was speaking directly to the summary report, which I don't have in my possession right now.
All right. This one is titled Currituck County Department of Travel and Tourism. It's a lodging report from June and July 2007. And it states in paragraph 19, what is the typical renter's primary reasons for selecting Currituck over other regional beaches and destinations? And could you please read those?
Be glad to. That's number 19 here, is that correct? These are bullet points. Beautiful beaches, low commercial, low high-rise. Beaches are not crowded. Larger, nicer homes, seclusion, quiet.
And so the last one was quiet.
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Mr. Brindley. Next, we have Wanda Harrison. Sorry for keeping you so late this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with each of you. My name is Wanda Harrison. I live at 1150 Baldwin Court, directly next to Mr. Siri. Our home is adjacent to the proposed parking lot, part of the Corolla Light venture. After just one visit to Corolla Light more than 20 years ago, we knew it was the place where we wanted to spend our summer vacations with our growing family. Several years have passed, and we've moved to Corolla Light. We are full-timers. We became permanent residents of Corolla Light and North Carolina in 2007. We enjoy sitting on our deck, seeing the views of the ocean and the Currituck Lighthouse. It's a place where we can enjoy time with our children, our grandchildren, and our friends. We built our home on a quiet cul-de-sac in an established resort, on one of the last undeveloped lots in Corolla Light. We accepted the facility and the wastewater plant behind our home, assuming that it was the permanent use for that area. We didn't realize until just recently the zoning had been changed. For us, the first notice of potential change, the fun park, came from the planning board, not from Richard Brindley or from Rick Willis. There are several concerns that we have that we believe haven't been addressed by the developer. You've heard many of them tonight. How does a fun park and the changes to our community affect the value of our homes, specifically those 6 that are adjacent to the parking lot? We believe that the venture will adversely affect that value. Currently, water management on our cul-de-sac surrounding the homes where Mr. Seary, ourselves, and a few other neighbors live has been an ongoing concern. We heard that there would be a pond, but we still are concerned that with additional impervious services added, there won't be a resolution to this problem. Adding a parking lot directly adjacent to our home presents security concerns. Corolla Town Center, with existing stores, restaurants, a skate park, and a parking lot, is separated from Corolla homes by a body of water and trees. It may not be apparent on the picture, but there are trees there. There is no plan from Corolla Venture for a permanent physical buffer between our homes and the planned parking lot. Another concern, light and sound pollution from this project is much more than the mentioned miniature golf course on the other end of the development. Lengthy hours of operation will deter visitors from spending time in our area of Corolla Light. That, we believe, would further diminish the value of our home. Mr. Willis has commented vaguely, "Don't worry, you'll like what we're doing." That's the only communication that we've received from Mr. Willis. Excuse me. Mr. Gray said, "Is this the project we really want to have tonight?" No, Mr. Gray, this is not the project that we really want. We object to the development of a fun park adjacent to Corolla Light, as there's no proof that it will not endanger the value of our property, and we ask that you reject this proposal. Thank you for your consideration. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Seary. You have already spoken. Okay. Last, we have David Murray. Okay, you don't have anything? Okay. Mr. McCready? It's all the speakers. Yes.
Sorry, I do have one thing.
Okay.
I apologize, just one quick thing. On the testimony of the landowner, that expert witness testimony under North Carolina law is not required for a landowner to give his opinion of value. There was some discussion on that. I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Seary testified that he had knowledge from experience, information, and observation on the value for his property, and that is competent evidence to support denial of this special use permit. Thank you.
Mr. Gray, do you have any rebuttal evidence?
There were some people who came in after the sheet was removed, and I believe they do want to speak. I'm sorry, I know it's getting late.
Okay, that's fine.
I had indicated that I thought this would take an hour, and boy, am I wrong.
Yes, you were. Gentleman in the back, please come forward and state your name.
No, he needs to be sworn.
me in
I'm sorry, were you sworn?
Yes.
Okay.
My name's Bruce Yoder. We have a home at 1102 Morris Drive in Corolla Light. We built it in '86, so we were one of the original 5 homes. And we've had our kids grow up there. We have grandchildren come now. And they come for what Corolla Light is and what it always was meant to be, which was a resort community. And I'm very hopeful that, and very confident that anything Dick Brindley has done, he's done completely, and he's quite often done a lot more than he's promised. He promised a 25-yard indoor pool. He built a 25-yard lane pool. Promised 4, built 8. Everything he's done has been top drawer. I'm very confident that the problems with noise and visual problems will be corrected in how they respond to the challenges tonight. And I think with grandchildren here, we do need more things to do in the evening than we have right now. And a little pitch and putt golf course will be great for them. And I think if it's going to be profitable at the theater, they're going to have to bring the kind of shows there that families go to. And the type of families that come to Corolla Light are not the kind looking for, heavy metal. I've never been to a concert myself, so I really don't know what I'm talking about. But that's it. It's a great family place. It's a resort, and nothing's been done that I don't think works out well. And if anything, I hope the fact that they would commit to having the shops in the historic district, which could be a nightmare for property owners from experiences I've seen from friends, the fact that they would commit to that area and maintain it and improve it, if that's what the historic district becomes, tells you what they're about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who was sworn that would like to come forward and testify?
You might ask him to come forward and be sworn.
Come on in, come forward, and we'll swear you in.
If there's anybody else to come all at once.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak that has not been sworn? If so, please come forward. Please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. I do.
Okay.
My name's James Tucker. I own and operate a landscape business in Currituck. I originally came to Currituck County to work for the developer of Corolla Light. I was impressed when I first started working there at their intent on trying to preserve as much of the open space and the trees there. A lot of other developments that came in after made no effort close to what they did to keep the vegetation on the property and make everything kind of fit together. The architectural requirements there were extremely stringent in the beginning, and it took a long time before they would even allow different colorations for the homes. I spent quite a bit of time working with Corolla Light after I finished working with a developer there. And I can tell you there's definitely a need for some of these other types of facilities. If you've ever had to be on the beach when you had those red flag days that lasted 7 days of a vacation and you couldn't go to the beach, you would see the need for that. I can remember when they used to have just the Wink store, and a lot of people were hesitant about having a food line built. It was going to be such a big box store. It was so unaccustomary for that area. And now you have 2 grocery stores up there because they realized there was a need. Things continue to move forward and grow. People are afraid of change, but you just have to kind of look past that sometimes and look for the better good for everyone. This facility is going to be in an area where it's going to allow a lot of people to bike and use foot traffic to get to it. It's going to be right across the street from the Heritage Park, which is a major facility which is not always as utilized as it could be. And there are a lot of things that have occurred around that area. The beach access right adjacent to a lot of these folks' homes, there have been trash dumpsters that had been dumped there and used as a drop-off place. Every time there's a major storm on the beach, that beach access and that whole area is used as a dump until they're able to clear all the debris off. And lots of those types of things have occurred over time. But I think all in all, this is going to be a good thing to have in this area. A lot of people will be able to get to it by bike and foot traffic. It'll keep people from having to go down to Timbuktu just to find some of these types of things. And if you've ever tried to get into the Timbuktu facility on a day when it's kind of cloudy, misty, rainy, it can take you 45 minutes to go in one driveway and get out the other side, even if you don't get out of your car because it's so congested there. This would give us a lot of more people an opportunity to use these types of facilities without having to drive 5 or 10 miles down the road to get to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Last gentleman there. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Michael Grabsky. My property is 1156 Franklin Street. It is one of the adjacent properties. A couple of things. Notification. It was very fortunate that we were able to make it here today because there was no information otherwise given to us by the developer. There was testimony as to the property values on the other side of the pond not being affected by Mr. Brindley. I believe he stated that he's sold those several times, I believe the words were. That does not discuss the properties that are further down and don't have a pond or a thick green space. We have some trees behind us, which is enough to obscure the existing low-level properties, would not stop light, overhead lighting. We do see the flash of the lighthouse as it is because, again, the trees are not very thick. Adding overhead lighting would definitely impact the property. The sound, we've heard every 25 feet we lose 6 dB of sound pressure level. As it is, when there's a wedding across the street on the property, over by the lighthouse in the park, we hear it at our house. Now, it's not loud, it's not obnoxious, but there are a lot of 6 dB drops between that open field and our house, and there are existing trees. So what I'd like you to do is take into consideration that there is a lot of information still missing. The sound pressure levels, I believe there should be some measurements made before you go forward in terms of the directivity, there will also be impact beyond our borders. Being the most affected by it, I'm very concerned. And as far as the property values go, I bought last year. If that were there last year, I would not have purchased the property. I was looking for quiet. We've heard testimony, not testimony, we have heard discussion at our homeowners meeting, which told us that the shift in Corolla Light Resort Village is moving to more homeowners and less revenue coming in from rentals. And that may be the case, but it may be that the people who are moving in there are looking for the quiet and the peace. I have 4 children, ranging in ages right now from 11 to 23. They are never bored. And after 9 o'clock at night, the younger ones are in bed or at home where I'm with them. We don't let them just, roam around. Giving them the opportunity to go to something late in the evening only re-energizes their activity at that late hour and would put them doing something else on the way home. So the traffic, foot traffic, car traffic coming up after an event is something that also needs to be considered in the impact. And the gentleman just before me also mentioned the 45 minutes to get down the road because of the traffic. We are now going to bring that with another 150 cars or so, possibly more because of the overflow. We will be bringing that right here, which again is the choke point for all the people to the north of us, as well as us being able to go anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
Mr.
questions?
McCree, before Mr. Gray gives his rebuttal, would it be appropriate to take a 5-minute recess? We have a couple commissioners, including myself, who needs that.
So certainly, it's
Thank
your
you.
call, Mr. Chair.
Everyone take their seats, we'll get started. Mr. McCree.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that the applicant has a brief rebuttal and argument.
Mr. Gray.
You say brief? We've got 2 points to be made real quick. I need to put on one quick rebuttal witness who's already been sworn because there's some confusion that has arisen that I just need to make sure we clear up. I've told him to be extremely brief, and then I will make an extremely brief final comment.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to try to keep this under 45 minutes. I'm kidding. I want to talk about the issue of what we're doing with the wastewater because there's definitely some confusion. The existing wastewater plant that has a capacity of 160,000 gallons is still going to be located at the parcel where it is right now, undisturbed. That entire wastewater plant will be left just as it is right now. So when there's been talk about, well, they have to build a new plant or, other discussions such as that, that's not correct. That plant is staying in place. What we are doing is going on and discontinuing the use of that plant, and we are eliminating the disposal that is occurring on site. But that's okay. We already have fully designed a 600,000 gallon wastewater treatment plant, fully permitted from the state of North Carolina, on land that we own in North Carolina, and the only way that we can develop the rest of our property, we have 17 additional acres of commercial property, commercial multi-use property actually, in Coral Light, is by constructing additional wastewater plant capacity. So we are not disturbing the existing total capacity that's available. We already have 600,000 gallons of excess capacity that we could dedicate. It's in the name, the permit's in the name of Outer Banks Ventures. It's not in the name of Carolina Water or anybody else. It's in the name of Outer Banks Ventures. And from the flow standpoint, the Monterey Shores wastewater plant last year on the peak day, the biggest day that they had 210,000 gallons of wastewater flow through it in comparison to its 520,000 gallons of capacity. The addition of 160,000 gallons of flow, which is the total peak day that the existing wastewater treatment plant at where Phase 10 is in Coral Light, if you add that to that 210 on a peak day, you would be at 370,000 of 520,000 gallons. To go backwards from where we are, we can take and dedicate the existing disposal that we have permitted for the new plant and dedicate it to the old plant, and with the minor modification of chemical feeds, convert to the new rules and put that plant to the new disposal area. But that doesn't make sense operationally. That's why, if anybody knows anything about Carolina Water, the first thing that they're going to do is save money. This is an operational change that they can make, whether we all agree to it or not. And I believe, regardless of how this project proceeds, this is something that makes sense to them, because they'll have all the wastewater flow going into 2 plants instead of 3, like they do right now. So I wanted to make that point. And then the one other point that I wanted to make, because it's sort of been implied that this is a big shift. We got wastewater from one development going to another, and one plant going to another, and it's like a muddle. Right now, Corolla Bay's wastewater is treated by agreement with Outer Banks Ventures in Corolla Light Wastewater Treatment Plant number 2. It doesn't go to Monterey Shores Wastewater Plant. It goes to our wastewater plant, which we agreed to do with them. It's one of the ways that this board was originally able to approve the Corolla Bay development, because we allocated capacity from our plant to that development during the period of time when the plant was under construction. This isn't new. It's been done. This board has done this on a number of occasions. So I wanted to make it very clear, we have excess capacity. We are way low in terms of the actual direct amount of flow. and I can answer any questions about that. Because to imply that we don't have that capacity or that somebody's dedicated capacity or we're tearing down plants, it's just not, it's not correct. And I do know a little bit about wastewater.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rohr?
Mr. Willis.
Yes, sir.
The plant that's on this property now then will continue in operation?
No, sir.
Will it be reserved to put back in operation?
The way we have discussed the operation of this plant with the state, we are maintaining 40,000 gallons of the dedication of capacity of the 160 that it currently has. That disposal is set. It currently goes to the Whalehead Club Tract for underground disposal. In conversations that we've had with the trust, it's in the trust's interest as well as in our long-term plan to discontinue the use of the county's property for wastewater disposal. So rather than use that 40,000 gallons, we made the decision to just shut this plant down for the time being. We're maintaining that 40,000 gallons of dedication for the plant. We're essentially mothballing the plant by putting clear water in it. And the startup process would take, by seeding it from the other plant, would take less than a week if we needed to start up the plant for 40,000 gallons of treatment.
Well, that may answer my real question, my terminal question, as it were, resolves around the buffers required around this plant as far as people, because I was wondering why you put the golf, which appears to be the least onerous to the residential properties, out next to the road and put the parking in the amphitheater back where it's more troublesome to them, when in fact, to me, it would make sense to have the amphitheater over next to the commercial area, blaring at that, and putting the golf back there next to residential and keeping the parking out next to the road, because the parking is going to be the last thing that shuts down at night as the people wander out of the concert area. Golf would be the first thing, of course. I assume that's because of the buffer requirement then of the wastewater plant.
Not really. From a land planning standpoint, you really dealt with several issues at the same time. One of the feelings that we got during the initial contacts that we had with the county about developing all of our property in 2008, 3 years ago, was concern about the oak trees that were located in Coral Light. We have been very protective of them. There's lots of rules in our covenants that are recorded in the Register of Deeds in terms of what can be done with our trees, and we are concerned about the trees that are on the front of this property. They're live oaks. So we were looking for use that we could do in that area, because it's a fairly substantial portion of the property, without disturbing those oaks. And so in all my conversations with staff, the way we have it detailed on our grading plan is that we're going to be very careful not to disturb the grade around those oaks. And we're going to work this course in through that so that we don't disturb the oaks as they are. That's how the miniature golf course ended up where it is. But I guess I'd point out that the entire site is zoned commercial, and I believe it was in the process of going through public hearings when some of the people that now own there were purchasing. So I mean, we were in that process in 2008. We submitted in early 2008, and this board granted the rezoning in October of 2008, which is when I believe somebody said that they purchased.
Okay, well, I answer correct. There's always compromises. You've got to make whichever is the biggest priority as far as the decisions you make in a land plan for.
I have one quick question, Mr. Chairman. How much capacity do you need for what you're trying to do? It can't be much.
I don't know that exact flow. I think it's 9,000 gallons. Is that correct? 9,000 gallons is the total flow for our project that's phase 10. We have an abundance of capacity beyond that. We have over 40,000 gallons that's dedicated to Corolla Bay that we have gotten back because they now have the wastewater plant in Monterey. From a dedication standpoint.
Mr. Willis,
questions?
In the spirit of compromise, would you be willing to do some type of extra buffering or screening or whatever on that back area?
I guess I would have to, I guess I would have to see what that would entail and what the goals of it was, during the entire process of developing Corolla Light, we have always had, and it's standard with PUDs, where you have these locations of different uses oriented together in clusters. I guess that's the advantage of a planned unit development concept. When we were developing the resort, interestingly, we were wondering what property values would be like next to a lit tennis court. Of course, there were no lighting rules when we started the development. What would the property values be like next to a swimming pool or next to the commercial area? And much to our surprise, those areas where the amenities were, they're the ones where people rent. They're the ones that people buy, and they become centers for activities. And it's because it's a resort. It's because the people that rent houses want to be where there's activities, where their kids can just, instead of walking all the way across the resort or getting on the trolley, which we have in Corolla Light, instead of doing that, they're able to go right next door and go to the pool. And the parents can sit there on the deck and relax, and they can see their kids. Or they can sit next to the tennis court, or they can sit next to this facility and see what's going on. So I believe it's going to actually improve values from that standpoint, particularly compared to a wastewater plant.
So your answer is yes, you
Yes.
would be willing to do some more buffering.
If there were, we would be glad to consider if there were buffers that made sense, that seemed necessary. That's something we'd be glad to consider.
Well, from my question, I was looking at it more from the concern that someone had about security from the parking lot, wandering over into the housing areas and that type of stuff. That was more my concern.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'd be glad. I mean, I guess I've actually had discussions with staff about the parking lot and about the access to and from Corolla Light. And it's, right now there's not really fences put up between different areas in Corolla Light. So it sort of starts a new standard if we start doing that. I guess I'd lean on Corolla Light Community Association to take a position on whether that's what they wanted or how they'd want that.
And I was just asking, in the spirit of compromise, would you be willing to consider that if that was...
Putting a fence along that property line or something like that is something that we'd consider. Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Willis? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Please come forward.
Mr. Willis, you say that it would be to my advantage to have this entertainment right by my home, yet you're putting a buffer between my home and the parking lot. So are you saying, you're placing a walkway now between, you're saying it would be to my advantage to have people want to go right over to the entertainment? Right now, I'm asking for a buffer. You're saying it's under consideration. Will there be a walkway now? So that it's easier to get from right now, you have to go out of the development, past the town center, come back in to go there. So I'm not sure where you're going. Are you going with a walkway, a passageway from our homes into this parking lot and onto the entertainment area?
I think actually the chairman was asking me if we'd be willing to eliminate the ability to do that, and I said in the spirit of compromise I would.
Right, but you also say that my property value will increase if people can access the entertainment by walking there and whatever. Right now, I'm about as far as you can get if you're going to bike or ride or whatever. So I feel like there's two different things being said. That's why I'm questioning you. I don't understand.
My point was that a wastewater plant as a neighbor versus an amenity as a neighbor is generally considered, and in our experience, is usually a much better neighbor.
But I can't see it or hear it. I don't see the water treatment. I don't hear the water treatment.
Ma'am, please, questions, please.
So that's, I don't understand. I want to know if there's going to be some access from our homes into that area.
If I said to the chairman that I'd be willing to
Sit down with the-
put a fence or
Rick, say no.
no.
Thank you.
What was that no to?
No
We're just gonna put a wall.
No access. Okay.
Mr. Gray.
I don't want to belabor this. I think you've heard enough. I'm just going to make a couple of quick points. Look, we're not talking about a mega theater here. We're talking about a 300-seat. That's all. It was designed purposely so that the noise would go away from the houses in the back. When you talk about in harmony, you have to remember this site has already been determined to be commercial. If we don't have this use, there's other commercial uses that we can do in this area. This happens to be the best use for the community and has ultimately the best likelihood of increasing the values. And I will point out to you, as your legal counsel instructed you, or at least advised you, I don't want to say he instructs you, that at the beginning of this hearing, contrary to what the other legal counsels indicated to you, lay opinion as to property values is not appropriate for your consideration. He is correct that if this was a trial dealing with condemnation, yes, a person can testify as to what he believes his value of his property is. But by statute, that testimony is not before you. The only testimony you have before you as to valuation came from the applicant and from Mr. Brindley regarding that. So we would respectfully request that you grant the permit as indicated. We have no real objections to the overall conditions that staff has suggested. We think this will be to the benefit of the community. And the final point that I'm going to make is when you've heard this developer is one who's done what he said all through the years. And he's built a first-class project out there, and you can expect nothing less than that.
Thank you. Hearing nothing further, I will close the public hearing.
And the evidentiary phase, Mr. Chair.
And the evidentiary phase, and I will ask the board for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the staff to restate their position on this?
Certainly.
Planning staff, I'll do that, recommends conditional approval with the TRC comments related to wastewater, with the Board of Commissioners establishing hours of operation, particularly for the amphitheater, use of the amphitheater. And then there's a number of other conditions related to landscaping, buffering, that the use permit doesn't constitute site plan approval, prior to land disturbing activities, all the things occur that Mr. O'Neill read, or Commissioner O'Neill read earlier in the meeting. I won't read that again, but it's a lot of stuff. And just a number of other things. I can go through each of the additional conditions if you'd like me to, but that's our position.
Well, I haven't heard one bit of discussion about hours of operation. What's the staff's position on that?
I don't know that I have a position. I'll say that we know that at 11 o'clock they have to extinguish the lights. The other putt-putt course you did a closing time of 11. Of course, they didn't have an amphitheater. I don't know that I can tell you what the best hour to close an amphitheater is. I can give you, I would say somewhere around 9 or 10. That seems more reasonable to me.
When the program's over.
Would it be appropriate to ask the applicant, do they have an idea at this point?
I think you've closed the evidentiary phase. I think that would be adding additional evidence to the record. So unless you're inclined to reopen the evidentiary phase and allow others to speak to that issue, I'd suggest that you continue your
Commissioner-
discussion and determine what conditions might be appropriate based on the evidence presented to you.
In their application materials that they originally submitted, they put the requested hours of operation until midnight.
Too late.
I agree with that, and that's why we noted that.
We know the lights have to be extinguished at 11, so you have to figure the concert's over and allow for an emptying time of the parking lot. 10:30, 10 o'clock cessation of music or any activities in the amphitheater, 10 o'clock.
I mean, sounds reasonable to me. I'm no expert in noise, though, so I'll be candid with the board on that.
Is it possible to find some examples of what's being done elsewhere that's proven reasonable? Because at 8 o'clock in the summertime, it's still daylight. It's difficult to get people to go to
If
one
the
of these.
lights have to go out at 11, if you stop the music at 10:30, that's 30 minutes to empty the area. It's going to take more than 30 minutes to empty 300 seats.
Because people always stop to talk. They got to find their car, do this, do that. You turn the lights off there, they're finding the car. I would say an hour to be safe. That's my personal opinion.
I'm inclined to agree. I think really if you're going to have lights out at 11, you really want to back the times up.
Floor is open for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make a motion for approval based upon staff findings, limiting hours of operation and music cessation at 10 o'clock. And with the findings of fact and looking at the addition of additional buffering if necessary. And that be determined by the TRC in consultation with the applicant.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? No. Ayes have it. Okay. Next on the agenda, item number 4, public hearing and action, PB 11-04, Three of a Kind Incorporated. Request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 9, Infrastructure, to require the county to return money held for installation of water lines and related apparatus to the developer if the water lines have not been established or installed within 3 years after such payment. Mr. Scanlon, are you going to speak to this one, or Mr. McCree, or who?
This again is a text amendment to the EDOs, and Mr. Woody would be the appropriate party to present to you staff analysis and comments.
Mr. Woody.
Cleared out for this one. The enclosed text amendment applies to funds that are held by the county when a subdivision is built a calculated distance away from water mains. And to make it simple is when you come in and do a subdivision in Currituck County, we take the number of lots you do, put them into a formula, and if you're within a certain distance of the water system, the developer is required to connect to that system. If the number of lots you put into the formula gives you a number and you exceed that distance from the water line, then you have to place a cash bond, or a cash deposit, I'll say, not a bond, a cash deposit with the county. And that cash deposit is the cost of the water improvements within the subdivision plus 20%. So what that means now is if your subdivision is outside of this distance, you place the cash deposit. When the county runs the public water supply in front of that subdivision, we then use that money to install the water infrastructure in the subdivision. So what it is, it's basically allowing the county to get water into subdivisions using money put aside by the developer when the subdivision is initially approved. Three of a kind, the applicant for the amendment tonight is requesting that, and they've got a cash deposit with the county. That's why they're here. They're requesting that the county return the money to the developer if the water lines have not been installed within 3 years of such payment. What that means is the county takes the cash deposit, we hold it. If in this case within 3 years we don't have our public water supply to that subdivision, then we give the money back to the developer. I've run this by and discussed with the Public Utilities Director, and so has the applicant, Mr. Pat Irwin. Pat Irwin does not support the 3-year time frame. Right now there is no time frame. We just hold the money until the water lines go by the subdivision. However, Mr. Irwin did say he would support a longer time frame, such as 10 years. Again, giving the county more time to get the public water supply to the subdivision. And the key is this, really, I guess, and staff basically, based on consultation with Mr. Irwin, we are recommending denial of this amendment request. I do think that maybe the 10-year time period would be some sort of compromise, but the bottom line is this, is that by putting the cash, first of all, whenever developers started their subdivisions, they knew the cash deposit was a requirement. So it's not something that changed. The second thing is that ultimately, when the public water supply is at these subdivisions and water is going to go to these houses, which it needs to at some point, money put up by the developer will be used to pay for that infrastructure expense rather than taxpayers or the general fund or the water systems enterprise fund. So ultimately, staff's position is we think that the cash bond is an appropriate thing for the county to hold until the water system is adjacent to the subdivision. I'll also say in this case, we actually offered to run the water line to the subdivision and go ahead and execute or use that cash deposit to put the lines in. However, in this case, the developer owns almost 50% of the lots, I think, declined that option. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Hopefully I explained it well enough. If not, I can try to do a better job maybe, if you have questions.
I have one. Has the developer and Mr. Irwin sat down and tried to negotiate what a time frame?
I believe they've had some emails back and forth. I don't know the extent, Mr. Ennis, that you've negotiated with Mr. Irwin. I'll have to let him answer that specifically.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Woody?
I have a few for this. What happens if the water lines never get installed because the lots don't sell and the developer's sitting on a
Bust.
loser? Yeah, just only because we have a lot of experience with that around the county.
And as the ordinance is written now, they would not get their money back.
Now, that seems to work very well in favor of the county. And it seems like we're at odds with purposes here. The jobs mantra we're always talking about requires business, which requires the support of houses, which are built by developers. And this is obviously an impediment to developers to do that sort of thing. I mean, I've been through this personally with subdivision where water taps were paid for ahead of time, the bonds are put up, and it's 12 people living in the subdivision. Are there other forms of security? And I guess this is a question addressed toward Mr. Scanlon, perhaps. I know cash bonds are not required for all matters of surety with the county. Mm-hmm. Are there other forms that would be acceptable, particularly for things in circumstances where it's gone beyond a specific time frame, or in times of an economy like this where it's frankly obvious that nobody's going to be buying any lots out of the subdivision for any time short range?
Two things. Answer your first part of your statement is, in this case, we are holding a cash bond, and I agree that rooftops are important. Creating a critical mass is important in getting commercial in the county, but also the reason we're holding a cash bond is because your subdivision is so far removed away from existing infrastructure that perhaps it's not the best place to develop that critical mass in the first place. That's one thing. So in a sense, the policy works towards, to me, directing subdivisions and density closer to the water lines, where ultimately I think it's more affordable for the county. Second thing is, to answer your question, though, when we are in the situation where we're trying to hold a bond. There are other forms of surety, such as a letter of credit or a performance bond. The only downside to those is they're not irrevocable, and the county's got to make sure we get those renewed every year or two or whenever their expiration date is. So there is a process of tracking and monitoring those. And I guess the worst thing is when you go to get it renewed and they can't renew it. Although I suppose the answer to that would be that you check with the institution about a month before it expires, and if you don't think it's going to be renewed, you cash the letter of credit or you call in the funds. So there are other options. They're more time consuming, I guess. Require more administration.
I have a question. If a person, if they elect to have wells as opposed to hook up to water, that's an option, right?
It is an option. As a matter of fact, the houses that are in the subdivision now have wells.
So every home in this subdivision could get a well and not hook up to the water and not be required?
They could, but I think the county's ultimate goal is to grow the water system. And
I know,
get
but
those
I'm just saying,
connections.
conceivably, they can do that. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Woody, how do we handle roads right now? Do they bring cash for roads?
We do a performance guarantee, like a letter of credit or a surety bond.
And how do you keep up with those?
We have to track them the same way. The good thing about the roads is eventually they turn over to the HOA or NCDOT.
Do you have a problem with those getting away from you, those bonds or letters of credit?
We do.
You do?
They expire, then we have difficulty getting renewed, particularly for subdivisions that develop slowly.
And so what happens when one expires? What's the recourse of the county if they can't build the roads?
It's ultimately a burden that's going to fall on the homeowners associations.
If I may, of course, and we have done this in the last year. If they fail or refuse to renew their letters of credit or surety bonds, then of course it is a violation of the UDO, and there are the enforcement remedies such as notice of violation and issuance of civil citations to cause compliance.
My concern, I think we experienced the same thing last week when we went to that legislative breakfast. We saw a couple of politicos from the state who essentially told us numerous plans they had, all of which were to put the burden on the localities and the individuals and benefit the state. And I just keep seeing the same parallel here. I love to see the fact that the county's completely protected, but sometimes I feel like we have to balance it with protecting the businesses too, because other than tourism, construction had always been really the heart of business in Currituck, and this is certainly not in the interest of developers in construction. And I feel like it's probably worth looking at some kind of balance that makes it a little less onerous. Tying up somebody's thousands of dollars cash ad infinitum because the economy causes their subdivision not to develop does not make sense. There's got to be some mechanism.
I think Mr. McRae just gave you the answer, as the UDO can go in and sanction if they allow the bonds to expire.
Now, I guess I was trying to sell Ben on the idea, but
yeah.
The utility director did say 10 years is a point to refund the money. So
Do we pay them interest during that 10 years? Or the 3 years, or whatever, Mr. Scanlon?
I believe we do.
How long have we had the money?
I think Mr. Ennis we've had probably over 5 years at this point. Approximately 5 years. 5.5.
Well, I think, could I ask, Mr. Woody, we agreed to go ahead and put the water lines into the subdivision, but why didn't the people want the water?
Principally because they probably didn't want to pay the tap fees.
All right. Now, do we have developments now in the county that you're required to hook on the county water?
Yes, sir.
And so this subdivision fell out of that requirement?
It did. It was just outside of the distance threshold that was established, and that's what triggered the cash deposit.
And that was precluded because if this downturn had not occurred, then that subdivision would have been up and running, and we would have had the county would have went ahead and put it there. But isn't it true that because the lots were not sold, the majority, and what does it have to be? Is there a vote by the property owners whether or not the lines are ran? I mean, do we not have to have a certain number of people willing to hook up before we extend the lines?
Our policy's been to send a letter, engage interest. I want to say we strive for over half of the residents is what we've tried to do.
So if you had over 50% in the subdivision, then the line would have been ran.
And we would have used that cash deposit to
build that,
install the line within the subdivision. Yeah.
Okay. And at some time in the future, if we have an upturn, which we are all hoping for, we can't stay like this forever, then that money, if it's not there, then that subdivision would never get that infrastructure unless they paid for all of it.
Or the county paid for it.
Or the county paid for it.
Or you had a bond.
Or bond.
If you have a bond, it's just like the roads. When it's time to do it,
well,
it's paid.
Let me ask a question on this.
Mr. Etheridge, go ahead.
How many homes is this subdivision designed for?
17? Is that correct?
17.
17.
I'm ready to make my presentation. I'll try to answer a lot of your questions when I have that opportunity.
And my question is, would the county step forward to build that water line up Snowden Road for 8 homes?
But the offer was we would if there was more than 50% of the 17 homeowners were willing to pay the tap fee to justify the expense to run it up there. And we did not receive that.
So we'd run a water line for 9 homes, run a water line of almost a mile in length for 9 homes.
Yes, we would have.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Woody? Hearing none, Mr. Brumsey, you're signed up.
Chairman, just for the record, if you would make sure that you've opened the public hearing.
Yes, okay. Open the public hearing. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the staff, my name is Billy Brumsey. My office is at 2883 Currituck Highway. I represent Mr. Ennis, Three of a Kind, and his family. And you all have heard what the situation is. He put a subdivision to record in December 2005, and at that time deposited with the county $87,540 for the purpose of ensuring that funds were available, not as a cash bond as I understood it, but money put in escrow so the funds would be available to the county to install the infrastructure at the time the county ran the lines to the subdivision. That's my understanding. It wasn't, it's my understanding it was not a bond per se. It was money actually to fund that project at that particular, at the time the lines were run. That money has been on deposit now for 5 years and 4 months. And to answer Mr. Martin's question, the county did not require a hookup to the county water system simply because water was not available at that time. So under that scenario, they could use wells to construct the houses and so forth. And once they do that, you have a hard time convincing a homeowner to pay a $3,000 or $6,000 tap fee, as the case may be. I think that's what happened in this particular case. That there is no incentive for a homeowner who has already got water that's satisfactory to the homeowner to go out and pay a $3,000 or $6,000 water tap fee. The county, on one hand, can command those fees at a time when the developer is required to pay those fees in order to get the plat approval, so that the water taps are available when the county water lines are available to the particular subdivision. That, and there are other, you all had other good questions, and obviously, in my view, the answer to the question and the problem here for the last 5.5 years
has been the installation of the water lines. Mr. Ennis is not in the water business. I'm not in the water business. But the county, years and years ago, elected to get involved in the water business. And it seems to me that under the scenario we're faced with here, there is some burden on the part of the county to either run the lines, install the infrastructure with the money that Mr. Ennis has deposited, or to give him his money back after 5.5 years and develop some other means to guarantee that if the county at some point in time in the future has water lines run through the subdivision, that the infrastructure can then be installed. But to hold his money hostage for as long as it's been held now, and as far as I know, there is nothing in the foreseeable future to indicate the water lines are going to be run anytime soon. Now, do you hold it from now on? I think an acceptable alternative would be refund the money and have some kind of bond. And I don't think this situation occurs very often. Am I correct in saying that there's only one other case where the money has actually been put in escrow?
There's a total of 3.
Total of how many?
3.
3.
Yes, sir.
Over 8 or 10 year period of time? Is that an accurate statement? 5 years?
I don't know how far the policy goes back, but there's 3 we have.
But that's the way I see it. And I'll be happy to try to answer any question any of you all have about this particular situation, if I can.
I'd like to ask you, Ben knows all this, how much money do we actually have of these 3?
80 something for Mr. Ennis, and the other 2 are maybe less than, I believe it's less than $200,000.
This by far is the largest of the 3.
Yeah.
I think the other 2
Yeah.
are
20,
significantly smaller.
maybe 20 and 40 or something.
Mr. Bromsey,
Yeah.
in your experience with bonds, I know you've been around a while doing some of this stuff, and is bonds the mechanism we use for roads?
The bonds are mechanisms, to my knowledge, are mechanisms they use to guarantee the maintenance of the roads. So at such time as the requisite number of houses are constructed within the subdivision and the state is ready to assume maintenance of the roads, the roads can then be repaired to meet state specifications for acceptance by the state. That's what my understanding of the road bond is always.
Is it not acceptable that if the applicant's bond does expire, that they be held to the UDO standards, and that the...
I mean, I think that is true. If the bond expires, it doesn't release the applicant. They just can't go back against the bond, is my understanding.
They would still have to front the $87,540. Is that correct? How about explaining that a little bit, just quickly, briefly?
In other instances where the county requires performance maintenance bonds, either by surety bond issued by an insurance company or by a letter of credit issued by a bank, those are issued with the county having the ability, if certain terms or conditions are not met by the developer, to basically call for those bonds, to require the surety company to provide the county with the money to do that which the developer failed to do, to require the bank to produce the amount of money to do likewise. And so that's the purpose for the surety bond and or the letter of credit. You have cash in that can be called upon to do that which the developer promised to do but has not.
Question then, what happens if Bob the Builder goes out of business, none of the lots are sold, place is going nowhere, somebody starts farming it again, the money just sits there forever? What do we do with it? How do we get rid of it at some point? We can't use it for anything else.
You talking about cash or
The cash, the cash, if it's there to put the infrastructure in those lots which never get developed. what happens to the money?
Well, if the county never uses it, I suspect there might be, for one thing, the possibility of a cheat to the state of North Carolina. The money would go to the state of North Carolina to be held.
That's even scarier.
Well, it's held in trust.
I know, I understand what you're saying. I just, as I say, with business being like it is, I think all of us understand we need to do everything we can to foster the development and well-being of businesses, because that's where jobs are created. Jobs are not created by government. And one of the primary job creation engines of Currituck County is building. And to me, this stifles it.
I don't think Mr. Ennis is trying to avoid his responsibility of putting in the infrastructure. I think his position would be that after 5 years and 4 months of the county holding the money, that there should be some other adequate provision made to ensure that those improvements are installed at the time the county runs a water line to the subdivision, which in our view at this point in time is not within the foreseeable future. Now that's, I think if I put this question to each of you, and it was your $87,540, and you had to answer a question as to whether you think the arrangement is fair to you, I think I know what your answer would be.
Mr. McCree,
One.
how should the language be worded?
By adding at the end of the sentence as currently drafted the following language: upon the developer's substitution of the payments, deposits with surety bond or letter of credit in like amount.
You need to close the work.
Is there any other questions for Mr. Brumsey? If not, thank you, sir. Close the public hearing. No one else signed up.
I'll make a motion that reads, that states what Mr. McCray just
Let me just read how the language is proposed with this addition would read. Any payments, deposits made to Currituck County or otherwise provided to Currituck County for the installation of water lines and/or related apparatus for or related to subdivision or plat approval should be returned to the developer or its designee if the water lines have not been installed within 3 years of such payment deposits, upon the developer's substitution of the payments, deposits with surety bond or letter of credit in like amount.
I'll second that.
Okay. Do you want to make them put the cash up and then substitute it out, or just go with the bond of some sort from the beginning?
We'll go just like just like he read.
Okay,
Just
cash
like
first
the
and then substitute
language
it out.
was.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, item 5 we took care of earlier. Item 6 is appointment to the Board of Adjustments. I believe
Mr. Etheridge.
Mr. Etheridge, that's your appointment.
Yes, sir. I want to appoint David Palmer to the Board of Adjustments.
Mr. Etheridge has appointed, or made a motion to appoint David Palmer. Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Let me.
You got a procedural thing, I think, first.
My understanding is he has resigned from the Economic Development Board, therefore
He did at our last meeting.
Okay.
he is eligible for appointment
Right,
to
understand.
this.
Okay. Next, we have appointment to the Economic, item
All those
7.
in favor? We didn't vote on it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 7, appointment to the Economic Development Board. Mr. Rohr.
That would be my replacement. That would be Mr. Ron Rose.
Mr. Ron Rose's name has been put in nomination. Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about the consent agenda.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to pull the item 3 out for just some discussion real quick. On page 68, 2.1, administrative authority, what does that mean exactly? And I am referencing, it says every location within said district is going to be required to hook to the sewer system.
Which page were you on, please?
Page 68 of the total agreement.
Okay, we're on page 68, were you?
2.1.
2.1 Administrative Authority.
Well, much like the planning director is the administrator of the zoning ordinance, and ensuring that it is carried out as adopted by this board, this provides that the public utilities director is the administrator of this particular ordinance to ensure that it is faithfully carried out in accordance with the manner in which it's been adopted by the Board of Commissioners.
But I think I read somewhere in there, any location within the said district will be required to hook to the sewer facility. When the owner of a property inside the district shall use such property in any manner which results in the generation of wastewater, and such wastewater shall be discharged into a public sanitary sewer. The owner shall install at his expense a suitable building sewer and other facilities necessary to connect the building directly to the public sewer at an access point provided by the district. Does that mean we're going to require people now to hook to the sewer system in these districts?
Well, it appears to be, you have to meet two requirements in order to be necessary for you to connect to the district wastewater system. First of all, that the owner would have to generate wastewater, and that the owner then discharges the wastewater into a public sanitary sewer. Then he's going to be required to install a suitable building sewer and other facilities necessary to connect the building to the district system.
So the sentence actually means that the discharge is such that it has to be discharged into a public sanitary service, like for instance, a winery or a brewery or something like that.
Right.
Okay.
Or that it is going to be discharged into a public sanitary sewer. That public sanitary sewer, obviously by the terms of that language, is going to be the district.
District, sure.
Or a house.
I'm sorry?
Or a house, residential house. Mr. Chairman, I'll move that this be tabled, this particular segment, until the next meeting for more clarification on this.
Have a motion? Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It'll be tabled until the next meeting. Okay, the rest of the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Commissioners report. Mr. Martin.
I would only like to thank the people of Currituck for their interest generated by the resolution just to look at the alcohol as being used on county property and everything. And I appreciate the people who called me, emailed me, and I'm, just gratified to know that the people pay attention to what's going on in government, and just say thank you.
Mr. Etheridge.
Do we have anybody that's in the affected counties of the tornado that are helping out?
Are you asking, did we provide mutual aid?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
I want everybody to remember the many people, as it was said in the prayer tonight, that have been affected by the tornadoes that came through eastern North Carolina. And, we're fortunate here in Currituck. I always tell people we live in the garden spot of the world. It seems like we're not affected as badly as other areas. But just keep everybody in your thoughts and prayers, because this is going to be a trying time that will definitely change the way those communities that were hit directly will look in the future.
Thank you, sir. Mr. O'Neill.
I have a question for the manager. I had a phone call asking me with the addition of the wastewater systems at Corolla Light and different areas over there. I think the additional fee they're going to be paying to pay for the system is what, $6,800, or it varies by subdivision, I guess. Well, one of the questions I had, would the county entertain a discount for people that paid their fee up front? First of all, I mean, the people that use the system are going to be paying for it. I've already, had people say, well, how can y'all afford to do this? We're not doing this. The people using the system are paying for it. But the second question was, if they go ahead and pay that total impact fee up front, instead of over the 60 months as being proposed, could they, instead of paying X number of dollars, like save a few $100s by paying it up front?
Yes.
They can?
Yes.
Okay, will that be communicated at some point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just ditto what Mr. Etheridge said. I think we were fortunate in Currituck that we did not have any loss of life. Bertie County, I know, did have, and our thoughts and prayers should be with our neighbors as well as our citizens here in Currituck. Mr. Rohr.
I just want to do a couple call-outs. We had a great meeting, I think, first module of the UDO rewrite last Thursday. I think Mr. Woody and his staff and the firm that's doing the work for it have done a really commendable job. I see some real improvement. I'm hoping it's going to affect the processes for that. And the other one is all of those Relay for Life teams that got out to the high school. God bless you all. I think from what I heard, it was either 118,000 or maybe 180. I don't remember what the exact figure was that they raised. Sorry?
118.
118 that they raised, which is absolutely amazing. I've had two more friends just this past year stricken with cancer. One's just started treatment. It's scary, scary, scary. And we just really appreciate your support for doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Petrie.
As a new commissioner, it was really an experience to see people come out and voice their position on things that they feel passionate about, and it makes you feel good that as an elected official, people do pay attention. So it was really an experience for me to see everybody come out tonight.
Thank you. Mrs. Gilbert?
I want to concur with my fellow commissioners on the turnout and the community involvement, the phone calls that's been received on the topics at hand, and also want to remind you all that this Saturday at the Whalehead Club at the Currituck Heritage Park, it's the from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the Corolla Pedal Foot Paddle. The pedal foot paddle starts with a scenic cycle through Corolla, followed through a run on the beach at low tide, wrapping up with a kayak paddle on the Currituck Sound. Any of you commissioners that are available and would like to come and help, Julia has requested our presence at 6:30 a.m. So if you're available and you're a morning person, they'd love to have some assistance, but definitely for a good reason, a good cause. So please come out and join the Corolla Pedal Foot Paddle event.
I'll go right over with Butch if y'all want to join us.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I
Pedal
recommend
Foot Paddle event.
Manager
That's it.
represent the board.
Yes. We have a motion. Do we have a second on that?
I actually have daughters that are participating in that. They'd like to see you over there.
And Mr.
I'll be
Scanlon
on a farm
would be
tractor,
grateful to
believe
show up and show support for his daughter. So I'm certainly we can count on maybe one participant.
At 6:30.
Item number 10, Manager's Report. Mr. Scanlon.
Mr. Chairman, let's just comment, the commissioners have mentioned this already, that the National Weather Service was here this morning. They did confirm that we actually had an EF1 tornado that went through the lower end of our county. Thank God no one was seriously injured, although we do have some property damage, both residential and commercial. Unfortunately, it has not risen to the level to qualify for any federal or state assistance at this time. We have made a request for the state to send in an individual assistance team. We're waiting for confirmation on when they will be here. That will be, if they come down and we do qualify for that, they will be providing low-interest loans for folks that need assistance But unfortunately, right now, the homeowners are going to have to rely on their homeowners insurance because, again, there is no federal state assistance money that is made available as of this time.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one thing? to the
Certainly.
manager? We need to monitor for purposes of addressing the homeowners insurance and inequality in the state, just how much money they're going to pay out on tornado damage in the Raleigh area, Sanford area, so that that can be used to argue the point that hurricanes don't destroy eastern North Carolina, as the insurance companies say they do.
Good point. Okay, I would like to recess the Board of Commissioners meeting. I need a motion to reconvene as a Tourism Development Authority.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you have one budget amendment in here for you to consider, and it's in support of the acquisition of the 2 water systems on the Outer Banks. And I'll be happy to answer questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Scanlon? Need a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? I'd like to adjourn the Tourism Development Authority, and I would like to call to order and reconvene the Board of Commissioners meeting. I need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to GS 143, 318.11.3 to consult with our attorney and protect attorney-client privilege.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it.